spring, 1978. Two young filmmakers, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, began shooting a film about a babysitter being stalked by evil incarnate. Shot in 20 days, on a budget of just over $300,000, the film went on to make over $50 million, and until recently was the highest-grossing independent movie ever. It's influenced a generation of filmmakers and film-goers, and its title has become synonymous with movie horror: Halloween. Today, Deborah Hill is a player, one of the busiest producers in LA, but she remembers Halloween.
What I like about horror films is the fact that they really get you to react. For me, the films were a way to kind of leap from reality into some sort of great fantasy.
We're all afraid of the same things. We're all born afraid of death, of loss of loved ones, loss of abandonment from our parents, pain, injury. All of it is the same. We're all afraid of the same things, which makes a movie that deals in our fears universal.
One of my first jobs was a script supervisor working on a movie called Goodbye, Norma Jean. And then I met John Carpenter when he directed Assault on Precinct 13. And I was his script supervisor and assistant editor. And then we decided to collaborate on Halloween. Irwin Yablans actually came up with the idea of setting it in Halloween. And we were searching for a story, what could the story be? And because we were very limited, in fact, they wanted babysitters. So, and I'd been a babysitter, and I had all these great stories. But when he called and came up with the brilliant idea of using the themes of Halloween to tell our story, it was like a gold mine.
I thought, what if we made a film in one night? We could probably do it real cheap because we'd use one set. We'd do it all in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And then I thought about the most horrific night of the year, Halloween. No one had ever made a movie about Halloween. And I picked up the telephone and called John Carpenter, who was in my mind at the time because of Assault on Precinct 13. And I said, what do you think of the title Halloween? Expecting him to perhaps balk. He got it right away. And he told me right off the bat that he could make the picture for 4 weeks for $300,000. I said, John, let me see what I can do.
I wasn't in this horror films until John Carpenter came to me with this film. And he said, I have a film and low budget, and he said $300,000. I said, $300,000? He said, well, yeah. I said, what's the stories about? He said, it's about a babysitter to be killed by the boogeyman. The word babysitter clicked with me because every kid in America knows what a babysitter is.
We went to a list of scares. Like imagine if, you're in bed with your boyfriend and he goes down to get some water or Coke or something and comes back with a sheet trying to pretend he's a ghost, but it's not him. It's all these kinds of things that we wrote down, all these scares, and then we decided to weave the scares into the story.
Basically, it was a complete 50-50 collaboration.
I wrote the first draft, laying in the kids, the teenagers, the teenage talk, the girl talk amongst each other. And John came back with a pass for the Sam Loomis character, which was played by Donald Pleasance. So all the stuff about evil and everything is really John's.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
The opening shot of the picture took an entire day to film. It's actually 2 shots. We took it from Touch of Evil, one of our favorite Orson Welles films. We set up so that we would start in the front of the house and we would actually go all the way through, creep in the window, see them kissing, go through the back of the house, open up the drawer, pick out the knife, and by the way, those were my hands. And then we would go in through the living room and up the steps and into the bedroom. And while we were up there shooting that scene, downstairs, all the electricians and grips were running around crazy trying to reset the lights for when we turned around and came back through the house.
The fact that we had a new tool at the time to kind of help us with that, the Steadicam. It was pretty ambitious because most of the time on low-budget shows, you didn't really spend a lot of time with the look.
Every town has a haunted house, and in Haddonfield, it belongs to the Myers family.
We slept up there. Anybody who's a fan of the film remembers Nancy Loomis.
Wow.
I'd like to tell you that a lot of mysterious, weird things happened or that we had this big passionate love scene, but in fact, as soon as everybody was gone and we got up there, we just sort of looked at each other and we're so tired. We just conked out. The end.
Not quite. The Halloween crew used other locations in and around Pasadena.
All right, what you're looking at is the original Halloween street. And I felt like this had the look we needed. Overhanging trees, could be anywhere. And yet on film, they don't look like rich people live here. They just like Beaver Cleaver lives here.
The filmmakers also used the stately homes of West Hollywood.
Hi, I'm Brian Andrews, Tommy Doyle from the Halloween. Over there was Lindsay's house. That was the house where I first saw the boogeyman, and I gotta tell you, that really scared me. Over here, we have the Doyle house. I'd like to apologize to everyone for taking so long to get to the door and leaving poor Jamie Lee Curtis stranded out there, possibly in fear for her life.
A lot of Halloween's success was due to the creative partnership between its director and cinematographer.
Get upstairs. What is it? All right, upstairs, get Lindsay, lock the bedroom door. Do as I say! Hurry!
Dean and I sat down and watched Chinatown. There is a real creepy feeling to Chinatown in the way it's shot. It's beautiful, it's sunlit, it's California, but on the other hand, there's something really off about it. And so we talked about this being a small town that's something strange here. He did a whole lot of blue backlight, okay? Creepy lighting, and it was really effective. It became a kind of cliche after he used it.
Jamie Lee has been chased in the house and she's hiding in the corner, and the shape, as we called him, gradually sort of materializes in the shadows behind her. Using a light on a dimmer, I brought it up so that it just barely began to expose the white face of the shape, the killer, hiding in the background there.
I always remembered John Carpenter and Deborah Hill seemed always, very preoccupied with getting everything perfect. They seemed like the ultimate, incredible, down-home filmmakers because they had hands on everything. And John Carpenter just seemed like a genius to me because he really knew so much about what he wanted from every single second of the film.
Veteran actor Donald Pleasance came in for 5 shooting days to portray the shape's nemesis, Dr. Sam Loomis.
Donald Pleasance was just an amazing actor. He's the kind of guy who just knew the character. We only had 5 days with him. He was just really great. He gave 150%. And he was like the elder on the set. Those days, kids making movies was rare. And so I think he was just astonished at our ages and the excitement and the freshness that we brought to the process.
John and Deborah called me one day and said to me that they were all set on offering Christopher Lee the part of Dr. Loomis. I said, what do you want to do, make another Hammer movie?
Christopher Lee turned us down, Peter Cushing turned us down, and Donald agreed, to my shock. And we sat down to have lunch, and he says, I don't understand this script. I don't like this script. I don't know who my character is. The only reason I'm doing this is because my daughter thought your first movie was cool. So tell me why I'm doing this. I'm scared to death. Oh, my God. And I only realized later when we became friends that what Donald likes to do is he wants to find out how much you want to do the movie. He wants to find out how passionate you are as the director. And so that's his little trick. Donald, his action is he runs and he shoots the shape, blows him out of a window. On the set, I was shooting his reaction. So he says, I can play this, what do you want me to do? I can play this 2 ways. I can play this, oh my God, he's gone, or I knew this would happen. I thought, boy, that's interesting. I don't know. Can you do it both ways for me? And clearly he knew what he should have done. He knew how he should have played it ahead of time, which was I knew this would happen. Because, oh my God, he's gone was way too much. But I realized that Donald actually gave me the choice, you see. He left the decision in my hands, which is, the mark of a great actor.
While Halloween was Pleasance's 108th film or TV appearance, it was his co-star's first movie role.
I remember that the first day we shot, I remember exactly what we shot, and I remember going home and thinking I was going to be fired. I just thought I sucked, and that, you know. And I remember being at home and my roommate said, "Jamie, the phone's for you, it's John Carpenter," and I thought, oh man, this is it. And he called to say how happy he was with the day's work, and I just thought that was great. That's never happened to me again.
We saw a lot of girls to play the Laurie Strode character, and Jamie was just so vulnerable and so real and so fresh. So she really didn't come with sort of the acting chops that most of the young girls were portraying at the time. She just was real and fresh, and she so wanted the role.
And Deborah came up with the idea of Jamie. Jamie was in this little TV show, I think. She was under contract at Universal. And Deborah thought it'd be a great idea to cast her, plus the fact that she was Janet Leigh's daughter, which kind of connected back to Psycho. So I have to give Deborah all the credit in the world for that.
And the fact that we had named the Donald Pleasance character after Sam Loomis, who was, you know, her boyfriend in Psycho. For those reasons, Jamie got the part.
I remember the feeling about it more than anything. It wasn't like something happened on the set. You know, we're working hard. Everybody was very young. We were shooting in an incredibly fast pace. The entire makeup, wardrobe, prop department was in a tiny Winnebago. Here I was with these 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old guys primarily, and a lot of people's girlfriends and friends and family all creating this movie. So that remains the thing that was special about it for me.
And whenever you make a horror movie, you have a great deal of fun. If you make a drama or a comedy, it's a nightmare. It's ugly, it's horrible, okay? Because the subject matter, everybody gets very serious, especially comedies. Boy, they're tough. But a horror movie, everybody starts loosening up, and the more blood you bring out, the more fun it is, the more people get killed, the crew is laughing and joking. It's like a picnic. And so that whole feeling was kind of rolling through Halloween.
Halloween's villain was more than just a killer. It was a supernatural hurricane.
What I thought about doing was not giving the antagonist, Michael Myers, really much of a backstory, but kind of kicking him up into a legendary kind of situation where he's much more like an element of nature. Because I thought that would be more frightening rather than personifying, make him almost a force. So then the mask, which ties in with Halloween, would blank out his human features for most of the film, making him then just some sort of force of evil that is irrational, unstoppable.
But the shape had to be more than just some guy in a fright mask.
Nick Castle had been a schoolmate of John's at USC.
Nick had a wife and I believe 2 babies. I know there was at least one, it may have been 2. And they came by every day at lunch, and you know, here's this guy with this oversuit on, and you know, the mask was just always lying next to him. He'd put it on and go do the work.
His portrayal of the shape, now remember, the shape has no lines in the movie, none whatsoever. It's just sort of a, you know, a mask, and it's a presence that we wanted. On Halloween 2, we had a stuntman play the role, and even though he studied the Nick Castle kind of feeling, he could never quite get it.
I think they're trying to make it more important than it really is. I actually just walked. John actually did say something, you know, I like the way you walk, I think it'll be good. Now maybe John thinks of me as a serial killer, I don't know. I remember I'm about to walk across the street in the first shot, and I realize he has not told me anything about what I'm supposed to do as this character. So I came up to him and basically asked him, what's my motivation, you know, as the shape walking across. How do you want me to walk? You know, how do you want me to, am I supposed to be this or that? And he said, Nick, just walk.
Nick was suggesting all sorts of attributes that he could play to this character, thinking, okay, is he really a psychopath? Is he really crazy? Is he somebody who's insane? Does he have any of the kind of schizophrenic movements that we kind of associate with mental illness? And I just told him to be simple with it. Basically, when he's watching something or someone, stand still, just move very gracefully, because Nick can do that. Make this killer almost a blank slate that we can project everything into and make it much more horrifying.
I am actually in this movie without the mask on. Early on, when the Michael Myers escapes from the hospital, he jumps on a car, right, and he smashes the car window. It was raining that night. It was supposed to be raining that night, and it was very cold that night. And all I had on was my underwear and this hospital gown. And I didn't know it was supposed to rain. This is 3 in the morning, maybe 40-something degrees, and all of a sudden, someone yells, Dean Cundy, that little rat, probably yelled, "Turn on the hoses." And they turned on the hoses. They didn't bother to warm up the water or anything like that. And I remember the feeling of ice cold water hitting my body through the hospital gown. And then they had to do take after take. And I'm sure there was no film in the camera. I'm sure the first take was perfect, and they were just doing it to torture me.
I think he really gave the movie something. I think there's little moments that he does in the movie that are really special that, take it away from being just some sort of thug in a suit. He really kind of, at one point, he tips his head and kind of looks at his handiwork.
And I remember when I stabbed the kid up against the refrigerator or something, boom, stabbed the kid, and I remember that direction. John said, "Tilt your head this way, tilt your head that way, like you're looking at him." And everyone loves that.
Well, he was so agile and subtle, and he made a great shape because of that. Well, I needed to go pick up some trick-or-treat shots, second unit, and I wanted them where trick-or-treaters went by and suddenly there stands the shape. So not only was I going to direct the second unit, but I brought the costume and I was going to be the shape. So I put this shape costume on, and of course I'm so much tinier than Nick. And in dailies it was so hilarious because the shape had shrunk.
One of the most famous faces in horror almost had a completely different look.
John assigned me the task of finding some choices for the Halloween mask. And I picked up 2 that looked like really good, legit choices. One was an Emmett Kelly mask. Emmett Kelly was a classic clown with a big red nose, stupid hair, and a big smile, big blue smile on his face. And I thought, how frightening, how grotesque.
The first Michael Myers mask was actually a William Shatner from Star Trek masks that we kind of changed a lot. We opened up the eye sockets, we changed the hair, we did something to the skin tones to make it this white, pasty kind of mask. And it was kind of scary because it was sort of featureless. And that's what we're going for.
And first it was the Emmett Kelly mask, and he came out of the bathroom wearing it, and everyone agreed it was pretty eerie. It was strange. It was weird, made you uncomfortable, and you knew that was a scary situation. Went back, came out with the other mask, and a cold chill ran up everybody's spine. It was so scary looking. It was so demented, it was so sick that we knew we had it.
I wasn't impressed with the mask at first. I thought the mask was fake. I thought it was phony. I didn't like it. I thought the mask wouldn't work, but I was wrong.
For the only time in the series, Michael's face is revealed for a split second on camera.
For that one shot, we brought in an actor, imported, a guy who hadn't been part of it, and did the reveal to, as I remember, he was sort of a blonde, nondescript sort of face, almost sort of the other side of the Captain Kirk mask was, a nondescript face.
But this kid had a youngish looking face, okay? And I don't even remember who he is now. But what he had to do was take the mask off and react. I think he'd been stabbed or something in the face. And people read into his face much more horror than is there. It really isn't much to it. It's just a kid.
The film's lack of blood was offset by one of its most distinguishing features, Carpenter's brilliantly menacing score.
I had to do the music to Halloween in about 3 days. I had to do the whole score so I could go in and perform it and get out. My dad had taught me 5/4 time on a set of bongos when I was young. So just to teach me some rhythms. They're not 4/4 time, it's off one. And so I decided just to do that as an octave on a piano.
I've never seen a movie completely transform. I learned a great lesson about the power of music and sound effects and sound on that picture. I know it's true of every picture, but in this film, it made a quantum leap. There's no way to describe the difference between. In fact, if you want to explain it to yourself, try watching the movie one time with the sound off. And later on, by the way, when I watched this picture with audiences, and I watched it many, many times, I used to see young people at the most horrific times in the film watch the screen, but clamp their hands over their ears. And I never understood that. I asked my son about that one day. He said, that's what we all do, he said, because the sound is too scary.
When the film was finished, no one expected what happened next.
The first theatrical engagement of Halloween was in Kansas City in 4 theaters, and we had a very modest campaign. I remember getting the first phone call on Friday night about midnight and finding out that we'd done $200 a theater. And I went to bed that night thinking, well, it'll get distributed, we'll do all right. The next night, we'd gone to $800 a theater. The following night, we'd gone to $1,600 a theater. And by the end of the week, we were doing $1,500 to $2,000 a theater. I've never seen word of mouth spread like it did in Kansas City. It was the most exhilarating experience.
Everybody was surprised by its success. And it didn't succeed right away. It was something that built over, 3 or 4 months. And even then, it wasn't like I walked down the street and people were going, hey, Laurie Strode, all right. I mean, again, 1978, it certainly did very, very well, and it made, a lot of other people a lot of money. And for me, it gave me a movie career.
Most pictures, they open and they go down. In this picture, it was just the opposite. It opened and went up.
There were 2 exhibitors in Boston that I used to sell pictures to, and they had made some money on Halloween. They called me up and they asked me, Irwin, how did you make the picture? How much did it cost? How do you do it? What do you do? The next thing I know, they hired a young filmmaker, and they took the picture and practically shot it frame for frame. Another man came along and hired Jamie Lee Curtis and made a picture called Terror Train, which just about duplicated Halloween on a train. And so it went. Finally, I turned to my partners and I said, this is nuts. We've got to make another Halloween.
First time I saw the film with an audience, it was, I think it's called the Egyptian Theaters in Hollywood, the kind of seedy part of Hollywood and Vine. It wasn't fixed up then. And I was with Dennis and sitting in like 3rd or 4th row and just wanted to see it with a regular kind of audience. And there was this really big guy sitting behind me. And when that scene came up where I say, see anything you like this, the guy behind me goes, hot damn, you bet your ass I do.
One person I'll never forget, in Boston, we screened the film one time, and it was a large audience, and by the 4th resurrection, somebody yelled out, you dumb bitch, you deserve to die.
I think the simplicity of the story and the way it was told is what made the movie really unique.
How many 20-year-old pictures do you have that keep their popularity? Halloween is the Gone with the Wind of the horror movies.
The last shot of the film, looking down at the empty grass there, and then a little montage of all the places we've been. Evil never dies. You can't kill it.
He has no morality. You don't know where it's coming from. It's your deepest, darkest fear.
Sadly, Michael Myers passed away this week, the real Michael Myers. He was the distributor in London who had distributed Assault on Precinct 13.
He was very sweet and dear, and he was confused. He said, what do you see about my personality? Why did you do this? But I told him that it was a tribute, because he basically started my career.
He may be the only mass murderer who's on a first-name basis with movie audiences around the world.
I couldn't believe the fans that are really so addicted to these Halloweens. They know so much about it, more than I do, as far as details and the family relationship in the story and the cast and the costumes, and they want to know who is playing Michael Myers, the one next.
I get letters from people that
that what they say is, Mr. Castle, we love your work, we love your direction on The Last Starfighter. Boy, Major Payne was really funny. Can you sign this picture of The Shape, please?
I get at least 4 or 5 letters a week, and Carrie, Halloween, Stripes, Rock and Roll High School, but they always talk about Halloween.
I wear my Halloween pin with great pride. You know, I tried very hard through 22 now years of making movies to always hold up Halloween and say, you know, A, it was the best experience I ever had. It was by far, up until True Lies, the best part I ever had. You know, I tried to point out the irony that in those exploitation movies, I was intelligent, forthright, fought back against adversity, and was the lead in those movies for that role.
Halloween redefined the horror film and opened the doors for 2 decades worth of imitators. But none have had the impact or the nail-biting effectiveness of Michael Myers, because real terror stands the test of time.
You know, in every script they want to kill him, they want to destroy him. I tell them, wait a minute, Michael Myers, I love this guy.
Because I was on some tour for something, and they showed it to a bunch of college kids. I've never heard anything like it. The place was going nuts. It was apeshit. And I'm outside the door thinking, this is fantastic. How great. It made it all worthwhile. That was what they were supposed to do, scream their lungs out.
What I responded to was the idea that somehow Halloween 2 could follow a moment later. So it would feel, when you saw the film, that it was a continuation of Halloween.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Quite frankly, I was surprised that Halloween 2 came out as well as it did and that it enjoyed the success that it did.
I thought it was sensational. I said, man, what are they doing a sequel for? It ain't gonna get better than that one. And I'm prejudiced, but I thought it was better.
What's going on out here?
Call the police. Tell the sheriff I shot him.
I am so surprised at the cult following of Halloween 2. And it is the gift that keeps on giving.
I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
The idea to make another Halloween occurred to me after the first receipts rolled in. I thought to myself that I wanted to make another movie with John Carpenter, and it seemed like the logical thing to do. It really wasn't something that I had worked out in my head, but the seeds for it came pretty quick after the initial success.
When the concept of Halloween 2 came along, nobody that I recall on the team was all that excited about the idea. We felt like we'd really done it with Halloween. That was an original, and we left it all out there on the court, so to speak.
I talked to John Carpenter about it, but he had another idea. He wanted to do another picture as his follow-up. I guess he felt that Halloween 1 was a fluke, or if not that, I think he felt that he didn't want to repeat himself, and I respected him for that. He wanted to do a picture called The Fog. And I said, sure, let's do Fog. We'll do Fog first. Then we'll talk about Halloween 2. And we agreed to do that.
You've got to remember this was an era where the sequel was still a concept. It wasn't an everyday thing.
I had to be in Cannes for the film festival, so I left for Cannes. And during the plane ride, I happened to be sitting next to Bob Ramey, who was an old friend of mine from Paramount days. Bob was now head of a company called Avco Embassy, and they kind of made low-budget pictures, but a bit cut above. They spent a little bit more money, and they wanted to know more about John Carpenter. And I said, yeah, we're going to do another movie with John Carpenter. We're going to do 2 more movies with him. We're going to do The Fog, and then we're going to do Halloween 2. Not long after, Bob Ramey at Embassy announced that he was going to do The Fog with John Carpenter. I was pretty upset. I was livid. I called Carpenter, and I got nowhere with him. And I did the only thing I could at that point. I sued them both. To settle the case, we agreed to let Carpenter do The Fog with Embassy, and we got the commitment for Halloween 2. Deborah Hill and John, as they did in Halloween 1, were the total creative forces behind Halloween 2.
So it was sort of underwhelming and like, well, what do you want to do? But it was evident that the powers that be, who were in a position to do so, were gonna do it. That train was gonna leave the station. I was kind of the logical person to point to for the directing gig, and I was thrilled. It was just, yes, of course, that's a great opportunity, can't wait. So you can imagine my dismay when the script came back to me and I read it, and I just hated it.
I personally was not too pleased with the script when I got it. It was pedestrian. It was predictable. It was a professional script. I just felt that they were abandoning the essence of the character.
That Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister.
It felt like everything that Halloween was not. Sort of the antithesis, where Halloween got it done with suggestion and shadows and true old school suspense technique. Somehow to me, Halloween 2 was summed up with that like hypodermic in the eyeball. It was just like, come on.
The theater of the mind to me has always been something I really love, and I've used it. Halloween 1 was born of that idea, and my instructions to Carpenter has been reported many, many times, was I don't want anyone to see any gore or violence or blood in the movie. Keep it to a minimum. I want it to be theater of the mind. I want people to supply the visual images. And Carpenter understood that perfectly, and therein lies the success of Halloween.
John's thinking on the matter was very clear and simple. You can't argue with the fact that since Halloween got made and all these imitators, Friday the 13th and all the others came along, horror movies had changed. There was inflation involved in terms of violence and gore and what you saw on screen, to the point at which John felt like he was in a box. He could not do the same thing that Halloween had been doing, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it and really do the good job that would be expected with deep sincerity. So I felt horrible, but I withdrew from the project, and I felt doubly horrible because it was my friends, my crew, my pals.
I came out of the AFI with a short film, and it looked like everything was going to break, and then I ended up having the same agent as John Carpenter. And part of the big selling point for me that this agent gave me was, look, I represent John. His career's taken off because of Halloween, and a lot of people are offering him movies, and he's not going to be able to do everything that is offered, and I'm going to do the classic bait and switch. I'm going to say, well, John's not available, but I have this young director. Well, little did we know that 3 or 4 months later, he called me up one day and he said, hey, what about Halloween 2?
That was John Carpenter's choice, approved by Dino De Laurentiis. I met with Rick, and my approval wasn't needed, but they were very courteous and asked me to meet with him. I found him to be a pretty good filmmaker and a guy who really seemed to know his business, and as far as I'm concerned, he did a journeyman job.
John and Deborah and I sat down and we sort of talked a little bit about the script, and I think from the very beginning, what they wanted and what I responded to was the idea that somehow Halloween 2 could follow a moment later. So it would feel when you saw the film that it was a continuation of Halloween. And so that was the overriding goal, I think, was to, if you liked Halloween, you're going to like Halloween 2, because it's really a continuation. So stylistically and in terms of the story development and all of those things, it wanted to feel very much like a continuation.
I had actually just gone and met this other kind of youngish guy who was producing a movie. And even though he had directed some, he was producing this movie. His name was Steven Spielberg. It was Poltergeist. So when I called my agent to say I'd met with this Steven Spielberg guy, David, my agent, said, "Oh, well, okay. There's a conflict. There's Halloween 2. And I said, "What's that? I hadn't heard about it." He said, "Oh, yeah. They want to make a sequel." I felt a certain, kind of obligation because, John and Deborah had given me such a great opportunity. So I decided that that integrity was the better part of valor, and so I agreed to do Halloween 2.
My first goal was to make it feel as much like the first one as possible, which meant very similar lighting and camera movement. And I really had watched that film a bunch of times, and there was a very fluid camera, and it was the early days of Steadicam, which was in those days called the Panaglide.
We knew we were going to be shooting, the majority of the film in a hospital setting. Working in a real hospital was sort of out of the question. So we needed to find a location that looked like a hospital. The production designer began looking around and found what was essentially a unused little hospital in Pasadena.
That turned out to be the most difficult location because when we scouted it, I was very aware of the proximity of the airport. It seemed like there was a plane every 12 minutes. And I said to the location guy, "What's the deal here? I'm hearing a plane every 12 minutes. And he said, no, that's the bad weather pattern. It's much better than that. Well, it turned out that was a good weather pattern. And the bad weather pattern, the planes would be stacked up, and sometimes you would go for 15 minutes without a break. They would just fly in one after another. And we had actually, at some point, we had to put somebody on the roof to be able to walkie-talkie us in when there was a gap, just long enough to try to get a scene in. And it was really hard on the actors because they just get into a scene and then this big 747 would fly over.
Rick didn't want a brightly lit hospital hallway because there's nothing scary about that. So it was a great experience to work in a location and try to find out ways to create the mood and style.
Where's Dr. Mason?
He's been at the country club. I think he's drunk.
Oh, great.
What have you got?
Stab wound, left anterior chest, possibly penetrating, multiple
Floor
contusions.
stroke.
Yeah, come on, let's
fracture
go.
right ankle.
When I got hired to do Halloween 2, I was studying acting. Not to be an actor, but because it was the area I didn't really know a lot about. In my class, it was a very interesting class. Tom Selleck was in it before anyone knew who he was. Ted Danson and Michelle Pfeiffer. For me, directing my first film, I wanted to feel as much within my comfort zone, and one of the ways to do that was to work with people I knew. So when you look at this cast, there are a lot of people that I worked with.
The opportunity came in that classroom because Leo, who was one of the actors, Gloria, Nancy, we were all in this class. And Rick just, took us on and said, let's do a film together. So it's, it's being in the right place. It's really working the craft as much as you can.
Now you have to remember in those days that this type of movie was just kind of new and it didn't have a lot of cachet at the time. So it was sort of like, a B movie. My agent said you might not want to do it if you get it.
Sorry. We worked pretty long hours. I mean, that movie was shot like a real movie. There was none of this, like, okay, 2 takes, we're moving on, 2 takes, we're moving on.
There was just really the desire to make something together, to work as a team. We were all just really grateful to be on this set and to be doing this film because we all had seen the first one.
On Halloween 1, Jamie Lee Curtis was relatively new, and with the success of Halloween 1 and the character that she created, it was obvious that she was going to be called back.
To Jamie's credit, she embraced the role of Scream Queen. She will tell you herself how proud she is of Halloween 1, and it didn't take much convincing to get Jamie Lee to do it. I think she's proud of her work, and rightly so.
She always is a real, extroverted, big personality and real trooper, and she had to do a lot of, tiring stuff.
She has to wear a hospital gown through this entire movie, and she has to do a lot of physical stuff. In fact, I think she has to crawl around on her hands and knees quite a bit in this movie. Hospital gowns, as we all know, are notoriously short, and they open down the back. And I just remember that being a particular challenge.
She had circa early 80s short hair, and so she wore this wig and she was always pissed off at the wig.
I played on a softball team here, the Showbiz League, and it was Rob Reiner, Billy Crystal, Bruno Kirby, God rest his soul, and Chris Guest. And she would come, and that's where they met. And the rest, as they say, is Hollywood history.
He was my patient for 15 years. It became an obsession with me until I realized that there was nothing within him, neither conscience nor reason, that wasn't even remotely human.
John originally wanted to use Christopher Lee for Halloween 1, and I can understand why he might have thought that way, but it was a very unoriginal idea. As I explained to John, if you do it that way, you got a Christopher Lee movie, horror movie, it's a Hammer movie. I had seen a movie called Will Penny. It was a Western starring Charlton Heston, but the role of the villain in that piece was played by Donald Pleasence. He played a maniacal father, and his crazy, wild-eyed performance so impressed me. It stuck with me for years. And I said to John, why don't we try Donald Pleasence? And he said, that's not a bad idea. And he liked it. And he called Donald Pleasence, and Donald Pleasence accepted. And the reason he accepted was because he had seen Assault on Precinct 13, and his daughter was so impressed with John Carpenter that she said, Dad, you got to do this.
Throughout your career, you meet people and you work with them and you say, man, I worked with Spielberg and Jim Cameron and so on, and I got to work with those people. He's one of them. He's one of the people that was really a treat to be with.
He took it seriously. He wasn't working on something below his skills. Once again, he was a true professional and very inspiring.
He's just an incredible character, and we had quite a few serious scenes, particularly in Halloween 2, with a lot of exposition. And he was someone that would get into character instantly, but the minute he was out or the minute they were reloading film, he would have a joke, he would have some oddball remark. I mean, he was pretty eccentric.
He didn't hang around and sit in the chair and rap with the guys. He was in the dressing room doing his lines, and when he walked on the set, he knew your part, his part, and you better get it right.
He knew that this little role had suddenly gave him new legions of moviegoers as followers, and so he was easy. He was key, by the way. In my opinion, he was the glue that made the sequels possible.
Marion Chambers with Dr. Loomis at the clinic. He's here.
10-4, unit calling, identify suspect.
Michael Myers, just get your ass over here.
John Carpenter and Deborah tended to use people over again. They like to have a little bit of a company. And I thought I would probably be in Halloween 2 because there were very few of us that survived Halloween 1. Marion Chambers was just an iconic character because she was this smoking nurse. And that's what everybody loved about her. So I was written into the second one. It was fun that she was sort of under protective coverage and nobody knew her identity, but Michael Myers found her.
I met John Carpenter on Escape from New York. He and Deborah Hill, they produced that film. And again, I was doubling Kurt Russell, and that was the reason that I was pushed onto them. When Escape finished, John went on preparing something else. It might have been The Thing, I'm not sure. But Deborah went to do Halloween 2, and she called me up and said, would you like the job as stunt coordinator? We'd love to have you. So I said, yeah. She said, well, you got to come in and meet the director. Well, that was okay. I was used to that anyway. So I went in and talked to her, and she said, go down and meet Rick. He's down at the end of the hall, Rick Rosenthal. So I started down this hallway and stopped, and I looked in this office, and there was just a desk, a chair, and this mask laying on the desk. So then I got the thing, and I put it on, and I walked to Rick Rosenthal's doorway, and I just stood there and looked at him. And he said, who are you? I didn't answer. He said, who the hell are you? And I kind of chuckled. I took the mask off and said, hi, I'm Dick Warlock. I'm here for the job of so-and-so. Well, come here and sit down. So I went over and sat down. We had our little meeting. I got up to leave, and I had the mask in my hand. I turned back to him, and I said, is there any reason I can't play this guy? He kind of looked me up and down. He said, if Deborah doesn't care, I don't care. So that's how I got the job.
And we just hit it off, and there was something about the way he moved, that he glided as Michael Myers.
Now, I hadn't seen the first Halloween when I got the job for the 2. Knew a little bit about the character because of what Deborah had said. So I thought, well, I better watch this. So I watched this, and I really, in all honesty, with all due respect to the guys that did it, and I understand there were 5 different people did it in the first movie. So with all due respect to Nick Castle, I couldn't put it together, what the character should be like. It seemed like when I put the mask on, I went, I would breathe underneath there. I felt it. I really felt it when I put it on and did it. Rick let me just do what I wanted to do. He would tell me, you know, you're going from point A to point B, but he never told me how to do it. And I understand that I got knocked by Deborah on one of the anniversary editions for never getting the walk down. Well, she was on the set every day and never said a word to me about, I think you're walking too slow, or you should do this or that. And the same thing with Rick. Rick never said, hey, a little faster, a little more energy, a little this. So I thought, well, they like what I'm doing. The most inhibiting thing for me was being the stunt coordinator responsible for the actors and actresses and their safety, and how far was I going to go to please Rick as far as the violent aspect.
Well, without Dick Warlock, it's nothing, because he's the man behind the death scene. And he would take care of you, you know, and I think that's what you learn to find in a stuntman, to look for in a stuntman. Because as an actor, he's your link to safety.
I know that you don't know me very well, but I just want to let you know that I'm not going to let anything happen to you.
It was my first feature film. And I was like loaded with energy. I was like, I thought every take you had to like blast it out 100%, and because that's what you do on stage. You get it all fired up. I used to run out of frame all the time. I'd be like, you'd be like, Lance, you want to be in the movie? You got to stay in frame, because I was sort of trained as a theater actor, and I was always darting around the stage, and so I thought it was the same deal. I sort of tried to apply everything I learned from theater acting and film, and it's like, no. Keep that guy in frame!
Lance Guest. We all knew that he was the star of the film, and he was incredibly handsome, incredibly charming, and actually very talented. I liked the flirtation between him and Jamie. I just thought he added a really sweet element to the movie.
I mean, I'm 20 years old. I'm surrounded by all these like really beautiful women. So, it was not lost on me.
Look, Jimmy, rule number 1, never get involved with a patient. Nurses, that's another story.
Bud was a guy that he was skating through life. I mean, he'd smoke his weed, he'd smoke, this and that. Ladies' man, or at least he fancied himself as one. He didn't do bad with Pamela Shoop, though. First things first, Deborah Hill, God rest her soul, she did not want me in that role no matter what. And her valid point in her mind was, this takes place in Middle America. Leo Rossi is an East Coast guy. His rhythms are East Coast. And it was like, oh man, I'm not going to get this. And Rick said, just be patient, be patient. And he never let up. He never let up. And in the end, he wore her down. And I got the role. We had a song that he wanted me to sing, And so the producer was there. He said, well, you can't have a song. You can't just pick a song. We'll have to pay the rights. And, you know, they were conscious of the budget. And it was, well, she said, all right, pick one that's public domain. And it was Happy Birthday. No, that's not going to work. Happy Birthday. And then somebody said, you know, Amazing Grace is public domain. They said, is it? Yeah. All right, he says, well, sing Amazing Grace like Bud would sing it. He said, you sure you want that? And he says, yeah.
Amazing Grace, come sit on my face. Don't make me cry, I need your pie.
I've been to signings, you know, throughout the country, and they all want me. Go ahead, sing it, sing it, sing it.
Leo Rossi. He's the greatest. And he has grown into the most hilarious gangstery guy you ever want to meet.
Leo, oh my God, Leo. Leo was in my acting class and I thought he was really hot. And when I saw him in the film, I got to see him naked and he was just amazing. Did not disappoint any of us.
I signed to do the nude scene. And the girl, Pamela Shoop, signed to do the nude scene because they needed it for foreign. And you know, the whole crew, they got that date circled, right?
Her death scene was talked about, you know, even before it happened. That was a very important death scene. It had to be done right and there was a lot of emphasis put on it.
Well, we get there the day, and Pamela announces it was about 7 in the morning. I'm not doing it nude, I can't. They called her manager or agent, and it got real like tense, and everybody, and I'm sitting there with, you know, my robe and my little Speedo on, and Rick says, Leo, look, I think if you get in there, you break the ice, she's coming around, it'll be okay. I said, okay, I signed, you know. So I take the robe off, I still have the Speedo, and I get one toe into the tub, and I go, oh, I said, Rick, it's freezing. And he looked at me and said, Leo, I'm in a jam, the generator broke, you gotta help me. And I looked at his eyes, and I went, this is the guy that went to bat for me. I said, okay. So I get in, I take the veins, I look down, it was a raisin. You talk about the Italian stallion, forget about it. And of course, she got loosened up and went in, and we did the scene. But that's Ice Water Team. Ah, boy, you want to do nude scenes? You want romance? Uh-huh. Okay, you got it.
The hot tub scene was probably my favorite. And it wasn't because of the obvious reasons, right? Because I never saw those obvious reasons until the movie came out.
What Dick had said, this is how it was choreographed. He said, when I grab you, right? Arch your shoulders back. You know, keep them back. I'll give tug 1, tug 2, tug 3, as far as you can stretch them back. And then tug 4, let yourself just go completely loose. I'll cushion your fall as you go down. Top-notch stuntman. He was a stunt coordinator. He did it perfectly.
Pamela Susan Shoop, I had to dunk her into the water, right? So I just talked to her. I said, what I'm going to do, sweetheart, is I'm going to put my hand on the back of your head, and when you're ready, I'll just apply a little pressure. When you're ready, we go down. When you're ready to come back up, you apply the pressure, and I bring you back up. And she was very happy with that. And so those are the things that I was concerned about as much as playing the character.
Dr. Mixter, it's an emergency.
My most vivid memory of shooting is that we were shooting my death scene where I get the needle in the eye.
That was one of my favorites, the way Rick had me come out of the darkness. I liked that. I thought that was really eerie.
That was a little different from anything else that had been done in the first one. It had a moment of kind of, and you could feel the audience in that moment of tension and suspense sort of go for it.
And I'm very much of a method actress. So I really, really wanted to just collapse, you know, after the needle went in my eye. It was very important that I just collapse, like, you know, be completely dead at that moment. So we began to shoot the scene, and I'm shooting the scene, and I get really into it, and he puts this needle in my eye, and I collapse, and I hit the corner of the desk, full on, because somebody accidentally had forgotten to move the desk. So my eye is cut wide open, I'm totally bleeding, and I'm yelling, use it, use it, use it. And poor Rick goes, cut, we can't use it. I'm fighting him to use it because it was real blood, it was real gore. And so they ended up taking me to emergency room, and I have 11 stitches or 9 stitches in my eye. The cafeteria scene was shot after my death scene, so everybody was scarred and puffy. So we had to just shoot it in an angle with a bunch of makeup on one side of my face.
One of the sequences I thought was a little different is when Gloria Gifford as a nurse is discovered on the operating table.
The way they did that scene was funny because they first created a pool, an actual pool, which was about, 8 foot by 8 foot, a bunch of like 2 by 6, and they put some plastic down, and then they just poured all this red liquid. And it was like basically a red swimming pool. It was like what they would have done if this was, a biblical epic and, the sea runs with blood. But we realized there's, 50 gallons worth of water, and nobody has 50 gallons of blood inside them, So at one point, I think it was Rick, it was like, wait a minute, this could not come out of a person's body. And so everybody's like, the guys have been, building it all day long, and they're like, they scrapped it, so we lost the whole day, and they just poured a bunch of blood on the floor, and they had a sort of a fake floor for me to hit. Spent a lot of time getting blood out of my hair. That was,
My death scene, they had me in the Mary Poppins harness, the actual one with the wires. And it's painful because they press against you. Very bruised, very bruised. Then when we were done, Dick came up to me and he said, I'm gonna bump your pay. You're getting stunt pay today. I thought, huh?
I did invent one thing in Halloween 2, a joke. And I said to Rick, I'm gonna put her in white hospital clogs, and when she dies, her shoes hit the floor. And I was like, yes.
The scene in the movie where I'm slashing, I hate that. But I've had fans come out, that's my favorite scene. I don't understand that, but anyway. The fire scene at the end, we did that 2 times. We set up the interior of the hallway. Having a roof on it made it extremely dangerous because the fire had nowhere to go, and it went to the ceiling and rolled out.
We set up multiple cameras and then cleared out the stage completely.
We were told to stay outside during this particular fire walk, which was one of the final stunts in the whole thing. And so we didn't witness what happened, but the stage door is gigantic. It's like a 5-car garage, if not more, and it's very heavy. And we were out there.
And then when it blew, it was larger than we had even thought. It moved the big, huge, giant loading door.
The entire door just went like that. And we're like, what happened? And then, we found out later that there's a bit too much fire in the fire walk.
And I came through the fire, and when I came through, it ignited me. Well, by this time, the flames are boiling and going down the hallway. I burned my arms right here because the suit I was wearing, which they don't have anymore, had zippers. Well, the heat transferred right through there and just burned my arms, but not severely. They just put a little salve on it, and we did it again. So we had to do that scene twice. And at that time, the other stunt guys in the community said that was one of the hottest burns you'll see.
Very effective, and also a great sort of visual climax to the film.
Deborah told me we're not going to do that thing anymore, because I said, can I have the mask? She said, yeah, we're never going to do another movie with him. So I grabbed the mask, I got the coveralls, the scalpel, the L-rod knife, the boots, and off I went.
I have been a big fan of Carrie. I thought the ending, particularly this sort of one last, in that case, literally from the grave. But I liked the idea of when you think the movie's over, it's not. And we had come up with this idea in which you think Jamie Lee is safe and she's going off in the ambulance and nothing can touch her, and we're 100% sure Michael Myers is dead, and because we've seen him burned to death. And but it'd be nice if there were one more twist. So we came up with this idea that Lance would sit up, and in that first moment, all you would see was the sheet, and there'd be just that one last little.
They didn't really want to kill me off, and they wanted to maybe spin off some other thing if Jamie was going to do more movies. So I think they just didn't want to kill me off. So as far as I was concerned, you know, I lived and everything's gonna be fine. You know, I just got a bump on the head.
Nobody said anything to me. I never knew until I saw the film that that had been cut.
Oh, no me. Oh, okay. Does that mean I didn't even think that I died? I never even occurred to me that I died. I was like, oh well, they just cut that part out, but I'm still alive.
And to this day, I don't know, you know, who made that decision. Was it a studio decision, a John decision, a Deborah decision, a Universal decision, a foreign decision, a Mustafa decision, a Dino decision?
I think it was proper to sort of give her the last thing all by herself and, you know, make it about her. It's not about me, it's about her. So I think it was proper. I think it was the right way to go.
Well, Halloween 2 had a lot of cooks, a lot of chefs. I was hired to direct it, but we also had a director before me, John Carpenter, who had, you know, because this felt like a continuation, in many ways he had a very strong opinion. And then Mustafa was the producer of record, but Dino De Laurentiis was also the financier and also a producer. There were times where they wouldn't agree on things, and so sometimes I was like thrown out there, well, you show it to Dino, but don't forget there's certain things we really like that he isn't gonna like. And so I'll never forget when Dino saw it, early on there's a scene where a kid shows up outside the emergency room with his mom, and he's got a razor blade in the roof of his mouth, and Dino hated that. And I knew that John and Deborah really liked that. And Dino was like, you know, oh, that's terrible, we need to take that out. And I was like, well, okay, but you know, I think John and Deborah really like this. And so there's a little bit of that.
Mark Goldblatt cut the majority of the picture. They called me to cut a TV version of Halloween 1. And I was in the next cutting room from where Mark and Rick Rosenthal were working. Deborah and John weren't happy with the director's cut. And they asked me if I would come in. They wanted fresh eyes on the picture. They asked me if I would come in and work on it with John over the weekend. And John and I went through the picture and cut about 14 minutes out of it. And John knew that he was going to write new scenes for the picture, and he wanted me to cut them.
So there were a couple of additional scenes that were shot later on that were not in the original script that sort of raised the stakes and upped the ante and upped the body count.
John showed up on the set and Rick wasn't there, and I thought, well, what's going on? And the reason that they did that is that nowhere in the movie did it explain how Michael knew that Laurie Strode had been taken to the hospital. So he comes out and he's laying out a shot where this child is supposed to walk down the road with the radio on explaining where Laurie had been taken. And he bumps into Michael Myers, and then Michael heads off to the hospital. Then he shot, I think, the burning mask at the end, and there was another kill that I made, which never made sense to me, but I walk across the neighbor's yard right after the opening, and this gal's talking on a telephone, and I hide in her house and they cut her throat.
The style of the film evolved into a little bit more classically what's known today as a slasher movie.
There was a bit more violence, but I thought it was rather well controlled, and by today's standards, quite tepid anyway. So I would say that, yes, they did jack it up a little bit, but nothing seriously different from the initial concept.
I liked the picture, and I liked what John came up with to add into the picture. I think the scenes that John wrote amplified some character stuff, and we moved the picture along. It was pretty lean.
You know, I think whenever a director directs a film, there are always factors. Filmmaking is not a pure art; it's a collaborative art. And you know, if you want to paint, you paint. If you want to sculpt, you sculpt. And those are single-person decision-making arts. But filmmaking is very much a group effort, a collective. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a sense of this auteurship, you know, that the director is the author of the film. And I think that's true when it's a personal story and it's autobiographical and the director's written the script and all of that. But You know, there are times also when you're hired, and you're hired to do a certain kind of job.
The whole Halloween series became electronic because the attractiveness was we needed no one else. That was just one or two guys in a room, did the whole thing. There's no arrangers, there's no copyists, there's no scoring dates, there's no deadlines that we're going to spend $50,000 tomorrow in orchestra, we better be ready for 100-piece, etc. At the same time, John Carpenter, in his minimalist score, didn't require an orchestra. So what he was looking for in a person to work with is, one, somebody who had all the technology wired, because he never wanted to know about the technology. In fact, a couple times I tried to explain stuff to him, and he goes, I don't even want to know. That's your job. You know, make sure it's in tune, make sure the technology's there, make sure it's wired properly, make sure when you push record, it really gets recorded. Done. Technically, I received the 24, at the time, a 16 track of John's original score that he did with a fellow named Dan Wyman over at Sound Arts. And so now I transferred that to a 24 track, got some open tracks, and basically I overdubbed me over John. So John was still there on tape, and then my overdubs is what shaped the sound of Halloween 2. Well, certainly the Halloween theme, the upgrade that I did with the overdubs, brought it to this darker, gothic texture. And then, of course, I added rhythm, because the original ones didn't have rhythms, and I actually gave it a beat. And also running in parallel to the Halloween 2, I was doing Star Trek 2 at the same time. So I had Star Trek in the morning and Halloween in the afternoon kind of thing. And I was left alone because Carpenter was busy creating the thing, and my assignment was to just pick up where he left off and modernize it, bring it up to date, beef it up a little bit, and give it back to them so they could put it back in Halloween 2.
The first time we saw the film done was at Universal, and it was a screening. And I had my parents come up. It was my first movie. And really what I remember the most, this is terrible. I said, Daddy, did you like it? And he said, little stiff.
As far as I'm concerned, the film was pretty much Pavlovian. They tried to they tried to get the same emotions in the formulaic way that Halloween 1 did. The difference is that Halloween 1 was original and it was innovative and creative, and Halloween 2 was, by its very nature, imitative and pedestrian. The connection between Halloween 1 and all the sequels, in my opinion, is invalid.
I look at Halloween 2 and say it was a great extension of the first one. Although, of course, it did have its own sort of standalone suspense.
To me, the sequels always had a bad name, so I kind of expected it to be like not as good as the first one. But a lot of people really, they think it's good enough, and it has the same kind of kick.
Halloween 1 is the iconic one, but also it was close enough to the Halloween 1 to be a valid sequel.
Halloween 2 plays beautifully, and there were just wonderful, iconic scenes in it.
I thought it was sensational. I said, man, what are they doing a sequel for? You ain't gonna get better than that one. And I'm prejudiced, but I thought it was better. I thought it had more gooses. Ooh, whoa, and all that.
I had mixed feelings because the only thing I felt, other than I thought that everyone did a really, really good job, is something inside of me felt like a certain responsibility to the 11 and 12-year-olds that were going to go see it.
It'll be okay. We'll play some games tonight. And
when I went to my first convention and I saw hundreds of people going around and saying, "Can I have your autograph, Mr. Warlock?" I was shocked, and I still am.
So surprised at the cult following of Halloween 2. And it is the gift that keeps on giving. It wasn't an initial response. It really took about 20 years to coalesce. Suddenly with the internet is sort of, I think, gave a meeting place for a lot of people who were I guess, harboring a lot of cultish feelings around Halloween 2 and the rest of them.
It was kind of hard, quite frankly, to reproduce the magic of the first one. The originality and the speciality of the first one was something that comes along every so often in movies, and you know, it was innovative and new and different. Quite frankly, I was surprised that Halloween 2 came out as well as it did and that it enjoyed the success that it did.
These are not easy films to make because there are always factors, and maybe that's because the movie sort of lingers and goes on, the franchise continues.
It's a real riddle how we got to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. When the concept of Halloween 2 came along, I just hated it. I withdrew from the project. I was in New York when Deborah called me and said, hey, we're going to do Halloween 3. Would you think about being the director? It was a godsend because I had been worried all along that our paths had just, you know, split and weren't going to get back together ever. And when she said it's not a real sequel, it's not going to have anything to do with the other two, I went, I'm in.
I take no responsibility for Halloween 3 or credit. I had nothing to do with it. They just sent me a nice fat check. The decision not to use the Michael Myers character was stupid. It was really ill-advised. We now know that Michael Myers is the backbone of this whole franchise, and why they decided to leave that, I do not know. I was not consulted.
Our thinking makes great sense and is a real money-making idea that everybody somehow just managed to drop the ball, including Universal Studios, and that is this: each year, let's come out with a new movie on the subject of Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and all that goes with it. It could go in any direction it wants, and each one can spin off any number of their own sequels. Now, tell me, is that not a great, fertile idea that could make money for the rest of time?
Halloween 3, for me, was really sort of fun from the standpoint that it wasn't making a sequel that was a Michael Myers film that we were sort of rehashing. It was, in fact, an opportunity to create new adventures and visuals that made it enjoyable for me.
Halloween 3 is not a knife movie the way Halloween was. Halloween 3 is a pod movie. Halloween 3 owes a lot to Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I like Tommy Lee Wallace, and I thought his contributions to Halloween 1 were immeasurable. He was really a very much a part of its success, and I think, you know, this was a reward from his friend John Carpenter, who they were boyhood friends, and it's to Carpenter's credit that he championed Tommy Lee Wallace.
I mean, he was the production designer and the editor, so he was a serious contributor to Halloween 1, but also understood the sensibilities of that kind of, you know, suspense filmmaking, and so that to me was very encouraging.
He had the same temperament as John and Rick. They're just easygoing. He knew what he wanted, and he set it up. This is what we're going to do. Fine.
I thought he was terrific as a director. He knew what he wanted to get. We went to terrific locations, and he was real easy on the set.
He did not have the ego that some directors can have, and some certainly writer-directors. So he was great to work with. He really was.
The sole written by credit on Halloween 3 for the screenplay is just about the most inaccurate credit you could ever conceive of. Nigel Neal, a well-established icon in horror because of his invention of the Quatermass character in British television and features that had a lot of mileage. John was a big fan. I think it was John who was instrumental in getting him to come up with a screenplay for Halloween 3 based on a concept that Deborah had been promoting which was basically witchcraft meets the computer age. He had had some lousy experiences in Hollywood, and from his perception, I believe he felt that, as a general rule, Hollywood had mangled his stuff. And so it's almost like he had a chip on his shoulder. And so when he turned in his screenplay and we read it, any criticism that we gave was going to meet with some resistance, I think. And we did have criticism. It was moody, it was dark, it was fascinating. I loved it. I'd say fully half, probably more, 60% of what he did is what that screenplay is. John was the first one who did a rewrite. He may have been surprised that his protege, me, wasn't all that enamored with what he had done, so I did a rewrite. But anyway, I was the only one with a name on the movie. So you can see what a ridiculous credit that is.
I think there was, again, this sort of team feeling about it. The fact that we were all going to be working on a variation, but, you know, all of us, you know, bringing our own skills and artistic sensibilities.
I did get the job on Halloween 3 because I had done Halloween 2. I think it's almost the exact same crew. A lot of the same people are on both movies. Because Deborah Hill, you know, remembered us all, and she was very loyal, and she just, you know, said, hey, who wants to do another one?
The cast on Halloween 3 were completely different.
I don't know, your father came into the hospital, and I thought he was crazy, out of his mind. He's hanging onto a Halloween mask, he wouldn't let it go, and what he said was, they're gonna kill us all. And in a little while, he was dead. And I don't know what the hell is going on.
Tom was already sort of a member of the family. And it was Deborah who suggested Tom. Not your most obvious choice, not a pretty boy, not a youth, but she felt that would be a nice, different way to go, and I completely agreed, so that was easy.
Drinking and doctoring, great combination.
I didn't feel very much like a medical professional because, I mean, right off the bat, I walk into my house and Nancy Loomis is my wife. She's actually Tommy Lee Wallace's wife at the time while we were shooting. And I walk out on her and the kids, have a couple of beers and run off with some young chick and head north. I don't know what the hell kind of a doctor I was. A classic story, Spanky.
Like Tommy Lee Wallace having no ego, Tom Atkins the same. He was not like your typical actor who's, you know, all worried about himself and me. He was as gracious and as charming and as generous an actor as you get to work with.
He always took the job seriously, but never took himself seriously. So it was always fun, you know, working with him.
There are a lot of actors that have been around a long time who choose kind of what they do during their career. And I never really had that luxury. You know, to me, a job was a job. If somebody invited me to play a starring role in a movie, hell yeah, I'll do it. I'm there.
Is this my father?
I was traumatized by seeing The Exorcist when I was a young girl, so I stayed away from horror movies. I got a copy of the script and I thought, wow, this is a great part. And I went in to read.
John was there, Deborah Hill was there, and Tommy Lee, and a couple of other people, and we sat in a room and saw the final 3 or 5 girls that they had selected to narrow it down. And as soon as Stacy walked in, everybody perked up.
Literally, as I walked in the door returning from the audition, they offered me the part. I mean, that never happens, so it was great. What I liked about Ellie was she was a strong girl. She didn't give up. I liked the flirtatious aspect of her. She went for what she wanted, and she basically got it, except in the end. But she was a strong character, and I like strong female characters. I think we all do.
We did one scene together, Stacy Nelk and I. We're coming down the road in the car, and there's a telephone pole like this, and the camera's shooting this way, and I'm supposed to come and not clip the telephone pole, but go by it. And then we cut to it, I'd run into the tree. And I came barreling down the road, came across, wham, I hit the pole, not hard, but enough that she went, ee! Squeal. And then we went up and everything came off fine. Nobody got hurt.
Where do you want to sleep, Dr. Chalice?
That's a dumb question, Miss Grimbridge.
Doing the love scene with Tom, that always stands out because that was my first and only time I've done a scene like that, which I was quite anxious about. But he made me feel so comfortable, and he was wonderful. There was a no nipple clause, so they could shoot my breast, but they could not shoot my nipple. Couldn't see this, couldn't see that. So poor Tommy Atkins and Tommy Lee Wallace, you have to shoot around this, and you have to cover up here, and these things are so technical.
We spent a lot of time together on that film. Jeez. And then she tried to kill me at the end. What the hell was that about?
You don't really know much about Halloween. You thought no further than the strange custom of having your children wear masks and go out begging for candy.
Again, it was Deborah's suggestion that we try Dan O'Herlihy, and again, just a home run.
An opportunity to work with an actor like Donald Pleasance was on the first one, a professional, somebody you had seen in films before, so he had a great deal of credibility. It was interesting because he also brought with him understanding of the mythology, the Celtic mythology of Samhain or Halloween, that we were using. So he had, not only on screen, a presence, but also we felt a sense of authenticity in everything we did because he was there to confirm it.
Dan O'Herlihy was an extremely talented man, extremely talented. He helped really make the movie. If his character wasn't as threatening and creepy and maniacal as he was, but with that very smooth exterior, the movie would not be what it was. He was an extraordinary actor, and as a human being, he was lovely.
I kind of looked up to him, I think, He had been doing it a long time, me not quite so long. We didn't spend a lot of off-camera time together, but he was certainly packing all the ammo when he needed to be as evil as he was, with an Irish smile on his face. Typical Irish, I've often thought of that. I've been to Ireland a couple times for visits, and you go there, and they're also hail fellow, well met, hi Yank, have a beer, what do you think, how you doing, all that. And I've always thought that just underneath that smiley surface is someone just waiting to knock you in the face and knock you down, and then smile over top of you.
What I want to know is why they put their factory out here in the middle of nowhere.
We shot the mystery town, Santa Mira, a little village up in Northern California played the part, and in real life it's every bit as strange as it appears on film.
It was such a small, sleepy, quiet town that you kind of got the creeps from it because it was one of those where everybody's watching everybody and everybody knows what's going on with everybody. But it had a weird vibe. It really did.
You do get this eerie feeling when you go into town that people are behind curtains looking out. We didn't have to stretch very much.
We went on location, the site of a paper pulping factory, and it is the stinkiest place I've ever been in my life.
We did that stuff for days. It felt like nights, a lot of night shoots. And running up the street, down the street, climbing into a window, out of a window, going up a ladder, across a roof, jumping down here and doing that. And I was sick as a dog. I don't know what I got, but I thought at the time, Jesus, if I had to go up that ladder again, I'm going to drop dead. And half of it didn't get in the movie. And I thought, I love being an actor.
We thank Don Post for 2 of the 3 masks. The witch and the skull already existed. And we collaborated on the pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern, with Don. But I figured out the rationale for Halloween 3 is that that's what the mask maker is calling these 3 masks that are being sold in the stores this year. And so somehow I shoehorned that into the whole makeup of the thing, which is just a desperate director wanting to make his movie make sense.
When do we get to see him making the masks?
Real soon, little buddy.
Then there's the whole comic relief of there's a family of people that sell these masks that come to the town, and it was like a husband and wife and a kid in a Winnebago. That was the most fun I got to have on the movie in terms of clothing. I dressed them to be, you know, as ugly Americans as I could possibly do, and it really shows.
Oh, I want a mask. Can I have a mask?
My role was Little Buddy, and I was the obnoxious little son. And we were up on a trip, seeing the factory, and that was the last time I watched TV.
Honey, don't get too close. You'll ruin your eyes.
The death scene, which was a fun part, they made a mold of my head. So when they were making the mold, they were explaining to me what was going to happen. And as a 12-year-old kid, you know, hearing that snakes and bugs are going to crawl out of your mouth, that's kind of exciting. And they made a mold of my head, and then they reversed the mold. And then they melted it to where the shape of the mouth that they wanted me to have. So it was pretty much when the snakes and bugs were coming out, there was a dummy from about here up. The parts where bugs were crawling over, they had like a stand-in, a stunt person for that. But the mask, when I was ripping it apart, you know, they only made one mask, so they make sure to do it right. Because that mask, it would fall apart if you gave it some tug, and that's what that was the part I did. They had all kinds of crickets, but when they would let the crickets go, obviously they couldn't contain all the crickets. So at the end of the shoot, the studio was just, all you heard was just crickets, 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 people going nuts. So once we were done, we were just out of there, because my mother, she was like, I can't take it anymore, let's get the hell out of here.
We've done perverted things in the name of entertainment and kind of ruining the wearing of masks, so sorry.
Stop it now, turn it off, stop it.
I think it ended happily. I think they do turn off that final television channel and all the kids of the world are saved. Yeah.
You're an optimist.
I am. My wife wouldn't agree with that, but I think I am, yeah.
Halloween 3 was just take everything you guys know how to do and go for it. Our sound that we had established collectively from Escape from New York and got super imprinted on Halloween 2 and then Halloween and then The Thing a little bit is the palette we made it from. So John really thought we found a great little notch that was Halloween-like, but it wasn't Halloween anymore. So he felt we successfully did that, and then we just went on from there, and whatever we came up with on sort of on the fly. You know, in fact, I had created the technology, or shaped the technology at the time, so that it was literally start the movie and just start playing. So John referred to that technology as the electronic coloring book. And there's no big technical sweat to making these things happen. It got easy, and he loved the fact that it was easy.
All right, roll it.
One of the most fun things about Halloween 3 is the Silver Shamrock theme.
3 more days till Halloween.
Halloween, Halloween.
3 more days till Halloween.
Silver Shamrock.
Oh my God.
Just thinking about the song, I can't get it out of my head.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
We needed a jingle. No money in the budget to hire some guy to go, hey, make a jingle, please.
I remember when Deborah said, you and Tommy are going to make this theme up. Go ahead. And she says, Use the theme from London Bridge is Falling Down, so we have no problems with copyrights. That's completely PD. So when you think about it, that's what it is. Da, 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 da. But then I went and dialed up this, on my synthesizers, this little silly thing.
I think we knocked out the Silver Shamrock commercial in about a week. We generally don't know the music before we try to create something, so we had no idea what the music was going to be. That was a major surprise.
I discovered I could do adequate voiceovers or create fake sound effects just for temp work in the cutting room.
So I slowed down the tape recorder, and Tommy Lee Wallace sang that much like the Chipmunks would do. So he had to think, 3 more days to Halloween, and then you speed up, and so the pitch came up and the whole track came up.
It turned out that I had a certain cheesy radio announcer voice that John liked, and used it in Halloween and again in The Fog. As the smooth sound, K-A-B, which I loved doing. So this was no different.
Gather round your TV set, put on your masks, and watch.
The big giveaway at 9, Just, I was fast, and I was right there, and I was free. And so, once again, no-brainer.
It's one of those strange, really graphic images and sound that I think it's basically designed after kind of a commercial jingle that sticks in your head, and then you kind of take it out of the theater and get freaked out about it after you've seen the movie.
Turn it off! Stop it!
I can honestly say I have never done another one like that. So it's a very unique highlight of my career. It's one wild little moment, but it has stuck around, which I think is remarkable.
People remember that. You leave the movie and that's going through your head. That maddening, repetitive song.
Stop it!
Halloween. The dead might be looking in.
Stop it!
The world's going to change tonight, Doctor. Happy Halloween.
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the night no one comes home.
First time I saw the final film, I believe, was when we went to Las Vegas. That was a nice little perk. For there was a screening of it, and we were all flown to Vegas for the night. And I believe that was where I saw the film for the first time.
When I saw it, I thought, well, this is, it's good. It's a terrific little scary movie in the tradition, but it died a terrible death.
The film did not get a lot of good reviews. It did not stay in the movie theaters for longer than maybe a week. It did not do very well.
Sequels are an expectation by the audience of a continuation of the characters they loved. And I think packaging it as presumably a sequel was disappointing to the audience because they had certain expectations.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, myself included, did the due diligence thing of making sure the audience knew what was happening. It would have required a really clever ad campaign, and nobody came up with it.
Everybody booed. Where's Michael? Where's Michael? I don't think they had any idea how big this character would get when they decided not to use him again.
It says Halloween 3, so where's Jamie Lee? Where's the big knife? Where's the shape?
You have John Carpenter's name on it, and you have the title, Halloween. And it was 3. It wasn't just Halloween. It was Halloween 3.
So it had the baggage of that it had to drag along of being attached to Halloween 1 and 2. If it hadn't been called Halloween 3, if it was just called Season of the Witch or some other title, it may have gotten a better reception.
There was a horrible backlash. It was crushing for me because it was perceived as a flop.
And it was the producers who said, look, Michael Myers is making us so much money, it's just dumb to forget the anthology thing.
And happily,
For Mustafa Akkad, as it turned out, the sequel rights reverted back to Compass, and there they sat for quite a while before another movie was made.
And so at that point, sort of John and Deborah didn't want to play anymore.
So I have to say I was disappointed, you know, as did John and Deborah and everyone involved, that the audience didn't grasp onto it as we had hoped.
So we're sort of the bastard child, the black sheep of the family, but that's okay.
Thank you all for coming out tonight for Halloween 3. This is so awesome. I know it's basically Halloween tonight and parties and everything, so it's really cool that you guys all came.
I lived for years and years with the certain perception that it had been a failure and that not very many people liked it. I thought it was a good movie, and I knew that John thought it was a good movie, and Deborah. And so that was good enough for me. It hurt that it didn't find an audience, but what can you do? You just have to butch up and go on with your career.
Let's bring up the man of the hour here. We got Tommy Lee Wallace right here. Writer and director. Yeah. So one thing, I'm never quite sure. Is she a robot the whole movie, or do they turn her into one at the end?
I don't know. Why ask me? When I went there and signed some autographs and shook hands and took photographs with people, I was flabbergasted at how many people adored Halloween 3 and took it to their hearts and thought it was a fine movie and enjoyed the hell out of it. That was the first inkling I had that anybody cared.
I saw it on cable, and I always liked it. This movie is its own animal, and it's very unique. Lots of kids get killed. It's sort of taboo. You can't do that anymore. It has terrific performances. Dan O'Hurley, he is excellent in the film. You have amazing cinematography from Dean Cundy, who did The Thing, Escape from New York, Halloween, The Fog. So he's one of the best in town.
Happy Halloween.
I think recently there's been kind of a re-interest in Halloween 3. I think a sort of a rediscovery, reappreciation.
You know, it found itself, audiences found it. When I meet people that ask about it, they all pretty much seem to really like it and enjoy it.
It's amazing that 30 years later, it's snowballed with all these fans, and it's become this cult classic. That's extraordinary to me.
The popularity, it's interesting. I think it's fascinating that this still has a following. I often get letters with a picture of myself, and they want me to sign as an autograph. A friend of mine went on eBay and he typed in my name and found that, this is really funny, that one of the signed autograph pictures is on eBay for $5.
It's nice to see that our efforts are not going unnoticed or unrewarded.
So very gratifying, very healing experience for me to see it through all these years and have it kind of finally find its audience and shine a little bit.
I'm tickled that I got to make Halloween 3 and work with Tommy Lee and John and Deborah again and Stacy.
I'm very proud to be part of it and proud to have been in it, and I love that people get the movie now, because there were a lot of smarts behind the movie.
It's a good memory. It's a very good memory, and it's once in a while when I need to like pull strings and like get into like big theaters, and like VIP lounges, I say, dude, I was in Halloween 3, so, and it works every time I get right in. It's quite fun now.
I think as a standalone movie, Halloween 3 is fine. It's a good production. The story works, it has its shock value.
It's a great little movie on its own. It's a standalone film. Don't judge it by Michael Myers with or without. Just watch it for its own content, and it's a pretty good little movie.
Now, in retrospect, you look back at it, and it has its own charm, and in spite of the fact that it wasn't, as successful, to me that was okay because, I enjoyed, my adventure on Halloween 3.
It has slowly but surely accumulated that annual audience that loves Halloween, that loves the season, and loves the movie. So it's been very gratifying to notice that the fans are legion. They're out there. So thanks, fans. I'm really happy about that.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween.
The decision to bring Michael Myers back to the Halloween series was made by the executive producer, Mustafa Akkad. And I think he felt that Part 3 had strayed a bit from what made the Halloween series the sort of the gem that it was, and they tried something experimental, which had its own value, but in retrospect, I think they felt Michael Myers really was the Halloween series, and they needed a way to bring him back.
There was kind of an impasse on how to move forward, and there was a couple potential treatments and takes on it, and it just was sort of dead in the water, and there wasn't that much appetite to do another one after Season of the Witch. There was an earlier treatment that I believe John and Deborah were working on. There was some discussion, and there was sort of an impasse on how to move forward with it.
Because of the success of the first one, we always, every one we do, we always go back, we like to go back to the first one. I mean, that's because that's the success. We did 2, it was quite a success. And then number 3, we had an argument, let's change a little bit. I mean, at the time, the sequels was not even, there was no sequels. I mean, we started kind of a sequels of this. So number 3, they said, well, let's change, let's not change the story. And we did number 3 without Michael Myers. And it was not as successful. So on 4, I took it over and went back to the basics of number 1.
And I'd been working with my writing partner, Alan McElroy, on another project, and he was a fan, but also a great, great genre writer.
The scripts they had didn't work, and they were running out of time because there was a writer's strike coming. And he came to me and said, would I look at this project? Could I come on board and take a look at it?
And we sat down and put a pitch together that we thought would make Mustafa happy and solve his problems, but also create a suspense thriller that we wanted to make. So I went in and pitched our own story, and they really sort of leapt at it.
And we had 11 days to do the script. So, I sort of jumped in with both feet and just ran with it. And I loved it because Halloween 2 had been one of the great experiences for me when I was in college, going to see that with friends. So the chance to bring the shape back to life was a dream come true for me.
We engaged Paul Freeman to produce, and Paul Freeman is a great producer, but most of his experience has been, for the most part, in TV. And the upside of that, the good side of that, is he just ran a really tight, well-oiled machine.
Moving to Utah was all on me. I had shot a couple of movies there, and I knew that there was a good acting pool and a good shooting crew. And it could be done cheaper than doing it in LA.
The effort to recreate Haddonfield and Salt Lake City was not problematic for me because I thought it was a perfect look. The town of Haddonfield was really the character that Alan and I felt so committed to. John Carpenter found it in Pasadena. We found our version in Salt Lake City, but everything that I wanted, the cornfields, the barns, the houses, the suburban streets, the school, everything was there. We just had to avoid the mountains.
My original script for Halloween 4, the opening scene was a shot down the hospital corridor looking at a wall. And it was sort of a beat, and then the explosion, the wall would burst open from that blast, and you would see Dr. Loomis's body flying backwards, kind of in, a flame, and almost right directly at the camera, and then you would cut, so you would know he was blasted out of that room and survived.
We decided only to reference the first movie, and I think the reason was we didn't want to get sort of tied up with a lot of logic police questions about Michael and exactly what happened to Dr. Loomis, exactly what happened at the end of the hospital. I mean, Alan studied it very carefully, so we knew that if we were going to hit any landmines or make any big mistakes, but I didn't really want to be influenced artistically by anything other than Halloween 1, which I thought that's what I was really trying to recapture, was the spirit of that first movie.
I still wish that we'd gone back and done that shot, because I think it would have been a great tie-in to the continuity of the first film. And I wish we had done that, because I think it would have been a stunning opening for the movie.
We didn't feel it was critical to have the Myers house because we had the penitentiary, the criminal insane asylum, where Michael had been for 10 years. And that was his house. In our movie, that was where Michael lived, and that's where he was. So we needed to effectively break him out of that asylum and set him loose on Haddonfield. And that took some careful plotting and some careful thinking to see, you know, how do you free Michael Myers? And of course, the prison transfer idea was what became the vehicle, the engine to get Michael out.
Yeah, this is where society dumps its worst nightmares.
Every movie in the history of the world has got their exposition scene, because you've got to get that out of the way. You know, you've got to let the audience get oriented. And when we went down the elevator in the criminal asylum, we got it all done in one elevator ride. It's better to just get it out of the way. It's been 10 years. He's been locked up.
He murdered 16 people, maybe more, trying to get to his sister. Nearly got it, too. But his doctor, of all people, shot him 6 times. Then he set him on fire. Both of them nearly burned to death.
It's a setup of the entire movie. It's very dark, and it's raining, and it's this, that, and the other thing. And he said, he basically said, well, I want this guy to be really, like, edgy. You know what I mean? Almost like, well, is he an inmate or isn't he an inmate?
Welcome to hell.
We had a sequence where the guard in the criminal insane asylum takes our personnel down through a hallway where there are other inmates, serial killers, people from the criminally insane. They were pretty good sequences and they were nice details, but for the sake of the overall pace of the movie, it was just too much time setting up story, and we needed to get going. So we just kind of pulled those shots out and got right down to Michael.
God bless Mr. and Mrs. Carruthers. God bless Rachel. God bless Sunday. God bless me. God bless Mommy and Daddy in heaven. Amen.
We went all the way to New York City to find Danielle Harris.
I literally just went on an audition and walked in and read for casting, and I think I had to cry in a scene. It was like scream for me, cry for me, and read the scenes.
And when she came in, she just captivated the room. She was young, but also very precocious. She was very poised, she was very mature. And we felt that with all the things that we were going to be asking of this young actor, that she was going to be able to handle it without being in any way adversely affected by it. And she just had the confidence as a kid to do it.
I was so excited to be making a movie because it was my first movie, and they treated me like I was a little adult. I mean, there really was no like, oh, she's a kid, you need to, treat her like a kid. I mean, even the stuff that we did, like the stunts and just sort of the emotional stuff, I was very much a little 40-year-old trapped in this like little shrimp of a body. But I was only allowed to see the first one, so I hadn't seen any of the other ones till I actually got much older.
We really made sure that she was cared for and knew what she was doing, but at the same time, wasn't exposed to a lot of violence or anything like that.
Everybody on set, actually all the special effects guys, like we would be in the trailer and they would be showing me how things were done, and so I think they wanted to make sure that I wasn't too traumatized as a child, to the best that they possibly could, and it didn't really bother me.
It's Halloween. I mean, don't you want to get dressed up in a really scary costume and get some candy?
The interesting thing with Ellie Cornell was that we were down to the last 2 or 3 girls who we thought could play that part. And there was some disagreement between myself and Mustafa and the Galaxy camp and Alan, and we had different points of view about which way we should go. And so what I finally persuaded Mustafa to do is do a proper screen test. Yeah, and in those days, we did it on film in 35 millimeter, and then we projected those dailies in a theater.
I loved the script and I loved the character of Rachel Carruthers. She was smart and she stuck to her guns and she was a fighter.
Ellie was very real, and I felt that she came from Haddonfield, and I felt like she represented a kind of wholesome quality that was going to get our empathy and our sympathy as the movie went along. And a lot of 80s, you know, sort of scream movies would have very, very glamorous leads, and I never felt it was quite real to the town that they were from. And when we projected the film in the theater, then Mustafa sort of understood my point of view.
Danielle and I spent most of the shoot together, day or night. I mean, honestly, her and her mom and I hung out a lot together. So we had the closest relationship for sure. Wise up to what men want, Rachel. Or Brady won't be the last man you lose to another woman.
Everyone thinks we've got this long-running feud or something, but it's pretty funny. We don't. She's a sweetie.
Have some coffee.
I was able to bring in definitely my own budding sexuality. I think that there's a sassiness about being that age that is kind of fun and naughty, and so I think I was able to bring in some, you know, a little bit of back talk.
Fuck off, Wade.
That kind of young, you know, girl who's, you know, I'm taller than you are. My boobs are bigger than your boobs. Or, you know, the guy's interested in me. You know, it's kind of, you know, finding that, like, that power.
Brady, are you coming in or what?
Kathleen, I knew in high school, and she was like always the hottest girl. Everyone was always chasing her. And I never even was even on the radar. And so I thought, this is fucking great. And Ellie, I mean, I just loved Ellie. Ellie was she was like the hottie, she was the star.
I remember Dwight had Sasha and I go off and practice the kissing before the drugstore, which I just thought was hilarious. He's a jokester.
We really needed help getting into these scenes. So I kind of pushed that along, yeah. I think Brady was trying to feel his wings of a player. I don't think he was a player. I think he wanted to see if he had any game whatsoever. And I think that might have been his first foray into game.
He was having a blast. And it was fun because we were kind of playing him a little bit and he was playing us a little bit. And yeah, life imitated art a little bit, but it was all in good fun, and nobody got their feelings hurt or tweaked but it was great. It was like, oh, so you're hanging out with her at lunch today. All right, got it.
Well, I'll just let you get back to Little Miss Hot Panties.
When I think about how we did the love scene on the fire, in front of the fireplace, you know, they got me to go as far as they could to keep it PG.
It was our first scene. We arrived that night, we did some rehearsing that night, and the next day we did that scene. And I was really nervous about it. But then, an hour-ish and a half later, while the lights are there, and the grips are there, and the camera's there, I was like, can you just get off me now? It just turned into, you know, it was numbed out, but it was exceptional. It was good.
Cops do it by the book, but the sheriff's daughter, she does it by the fireplace. And I think the shirt that Cops Do It by the Book, I think that was designed by Bucky, the prop master.
What are you, deaf?
And the prop guy was, of course, in charge of putting together the helmets and all the uniforms that went with that. And I just think it was an inside joke.
Bucky tried to get himself into everywhere that Bucky could get himself, including maybe some of the crew, but who knows? He was a pretty funny guy.
We were all really close because it's a pretty isolated circumstance to, you know, to be on a set that long together.
At the time, I auditioned for a character named Kyle, which was the Frankenstein kid in the school when they're teasing Jamie about her mom being dead.
Jamie's an orphan.
I didn't get that. A couple days later, agent called me and said, hey, they liked you, but they don't want you to play that character. They actually want you to play Little Michael. And it was 6-7 hours of literally, Eric, come stand in front of this mirror. There's 3 scenes that I'm in Halloween 4. The first one was when they do the exterior and it says Halloween and it has the kids chasing after the school bus. I'm the last kid in the line of kids chasing after the bus. And then after that, they drove me down the street and put me in the clown costume, and they took pictures of me in the clown costume, and that's actually in the shoebox scene. We went over to the Vincent's and shot the exterior of Vincent's, and I'm actually in that scene as well. But for the first 10, 15 years after I filmed that, I had no idea like how significant that was, other than I was in this movie for 3 seconds back in 1988.
I worked at Don Post Studios, and we made the original mask for Halloween. And this producer, he brought a mask out for me and looked at it. It was pink with white hair. And I thought, that isn't quite the mask, but we'll work around it, you know. So I got hired. I asked Don Post Jr., when he redid it for us, to use the Shatner mold and actually use William Shatner, because we wanted the actual true face. I didn't get a chance to see those masks until we actually got on set. I opened the box, and there were 6 of them, and they were pink with white hair. And I was going, this is not right. It's supposed to be white with brown hair. And I told the producer that it should be changed.
I remember somebody saying at some point, Michael Myers doesn't have blonde hair. The mask is brown, and there was some kind of scrambling and shit going on.
There was tremendous upheaval about it. You know, a lot of discussion, a lot of committee meetings about the mask, the mask, the mask.
And I had to actually repaint the mask white and streak tip the white hair brown to reverse it to make it look like Michael Myers. And that's why it had that bumpy texture to it.
There's always issues with the masks, always, and I think that's created a whole folklore to itself, you know, getting these masks and all the different looks.
There's a scene in the school, you can see directly that it's a pink mask with white hair.
I still believe that the reason that mask in the throwing Loomis through the door in the elementary school is off is because someone ran to the prop truck at 4 in the morning and brought in the wrong mask, and everybody was too overtired to catch it. I really think that was a mistake, and had we more time or money, we probably should have gone back and reshot it. My communication regarding the activity of Michael Myers was always through Fred Lerner, the stunt coordinator.
He was a member of the Stuntman Association, and he had the show, and he knew me and just asked me if I wanted to do it. You know, I had one situation with our director, Dwight Little. I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, but during the first part when we were shooting in the gas station and I was supposed to stand behind the counter and Donald Pleasance shoots me, he put a rope around me with a jerk line so that when Donald actually shot me, he could pull me right out of frame and then be a nice clean cut.
God damn you.
And when we did that, the director wanted me to take a reaction. And I thought it was kind of strange, but I did. Next time we did the shot, second take, I took a shot, fell against the counter, hit some plates and fell down. And I don't think that went over too well in dailies.
I recall Tom Morga with that situation when he was replaced, and it was early on in the shooting, as I recall. And I believe what it came down to was the way he was portraying the shape.
There was a lot of disappointment and a lot of concern from Mustafa because they felt very proprietary about Michael, that it looked exactly right. I had my eye kind of on the cast and the acting and the photography, so I wasn't watching it as carefully as they were. But I know there were conversations and there was a lot of redoing and readjusting.
We had a problem with the mask, with the eyes being cut open. The producer came up and wanted the eyes bigger. And I said, there's no way I can cut these eyes open and change the filter within 3 minutes when we're filming, because if we do, the glue would be fresh and Tom underneath it would actually faint and fall over and kill himself. So we had a big argument, and the stuntman had an argument with the producer, And finally, we kind of won because we had no time to do the change. He decided to fire me, and he did. He fired me right in front of the crew. At the time, Fangoria magazine was doing a big article. The guy who was there knew me, and he told the producer that if he didn't hire me back, he would not do anything for him whatsoever to promote this movie. So they turned around within a half an hour, and they actually hired me back. I was in the makeup department getting ready to leave. And they knocked on the door and said, "We're sorry, we want you to come back. We don't want you to leave." So I stayed with the company. Unfortunately, the stuntman did get let go.
I'm the one that got the credit. Tom got fired off the show. And as far as why or how or why, I don't even want to go there. But I replaced Tom on the beginning of Halloween 4 for whatever reason.
I'm often asked about how much of the film I did because I shared the film with George Wilbur. First thing I did was at the gas station. I was in gauze, and then I got shot at by Donald Pleasance, and I drove the tow truck, broke the door on the garage, and chased him down. And then I was in the drugstore, put the mask on in that scene. I was shot in the face with the CO2 from the fire extinguisher. The last part I did on the film was at the Sheriff Meeker's house. I had a double-barrel shotgun and used it to impale her up on the door. And that's basically about the last thing I did, at least in sequence in the film.
They interviewed 3 or 4 stuntmen to possibly play the part as Michael Myers. They wanted somebody over 6 foot. The last 2 or first 2 were kind of short guys. They wanted somebody at least 6 foot or bigger. And Mustafa Cad chose me, picked me, said, "I like this this George Wilbur guy here." They liked my walk. I got my own style, Wilbur walk, and Mustafa said, "That's a good walk. That's what I am. That's who I am, is this walk, you know."
All of the guys that I've ever worked with that are these like big bad killers are the nicest, sweetest, most loving men, and maybe this is like the flip side of their alter ego, or maybe I don't know that side of them.
I handled her like my own daughter. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want to take her acting ability away, but no, I said, "Danielle, remember, this is make-believe, and I'm George. We're going to have fun doing the scene. When I grab you from under the bed, remember, it's only me."
I remember a lot of times like him taking the mask, you know, him not having the mask on until he had to have it on, so we kind of would walk through things.
Got you groped my daughter. I used that shotgun on you. You understand?
Honestly, my favorite actor in the movie was Bo Starr. I thought, you know, he really nailed the part of the sheriff. He just hit it out of the park. He was exactly what I wrote.
Son of a bitch, you just created a lynch mob.
You haven't got a police force.
Well, I play a lot of police. And I was a basic sheriff of the town, and he was the guy appointed to get the villain and help Dr. Loomis.
I tell you, Michael Myers is here in this town. He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Donald Pleasance was one of the finest actors around at the time, and he just lent a certain amount of stature to the entire production.
The fact that he had agreed to do Halloween 4 was probably the biggest and strongest incentive for me to want to fight to get this movie. I mean, to work as a young filmmaker, to work with an English actor of that caliber with that credit history, it was a huge incentive for me, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
You know, he was the movie star. Like, he was the movie star on set, so shit went right when Donald walked on set, that's for sure.
But he was still very cordial and super, super sweet with Danielle and I.
Way out of my league when I got to the set. I was just a 19-year-old kid and really had no real concept of all the work that he had already done. But he was a very sweet, genuine, kind-hearted.
You know, he would just go in and nail it on the first take. He was a seasoned pro, and it was a real honor to work with him.
Michael Myers is in hell. Buried where he belongs.
He was an older man at that time, and he tired easily. And of course, because it's Halloween, we had a lot of night shooting. And one of my responsibilities was to make sure that we worked him for 4 or 5 hours to get the best from him and that the rest of the day would be very light, driving or walking up to the house or something that didn't require a lot of mental activity. Not to say that he wasn't willing and game, it's just I did notice he would, after 4 or 5 hours of straight shooting and dialogue scenes, he would tire. And I didn't want to lose his energy and I didn't want to lose his enthusiasm. So we boarded him very carefully so he was fresh, got his work done, and then we moved on to do other things. But other than that, he was very game to do anything you asked.
Look at me. Hoffman, take a good look.
They wanted him burnt. So we had to burn his right hand and right cheek. And we did the test makeup on it, and we did like basically, it looked like a hollow circle with a boil in the middle. And that was okayed by everybody before we started shooting the movie.
Burn makeup is very difficult. And what we realized is we just needed enough to remind the audience that we knew about the fire and the explosion, but by overdoing it, it became distracting to the story.
Donald was watching the dailies with his girlfriend, and they were a little tipsy, and his girlfriend freaked out and said, "Look, Donald, you got an egg on the side of your face." And he freaked out. And he goes, "Oh my God, it does look like an egg." And if you really look at it, it does kind of look like a fried egg on the side of his face. And the next day, the director came over in the makeup department with me, knocked on the door and said, "Donald's coming in. He wants a new scar on the side of his face."
And we really had to work to sort of find a medium. And it was frustrating because, you know, you want to come out of the gate and get everything right, but it took a little work.
Every scene that we had with that scar, we had to reshoot it. Unfortunately, in the editing, somehow they mixed it up, and you will see at the beginning when he's with the preacher in the truck, it goes back and forth, back and forth. It didn't really make me look very good. Matter of fact, the Halloween 4 was my last movie. I retired after that.
Halloween 4 was about the fourth film I worked on, but it was the first Halloween. I was right out of high school and I was a PA. My activities range from getting the actors drinks to raking up the leaves. If you see all those leaves all throughout the film, you can just picture me on a cold Utah morning raking all those up on the set. But it was a great experience. It was a really well-oiled machine, and it was a really smooth production.
They pretty much shot what I wrote. You know, there were some changes for budget, but the script I wrote is pretty much the script that they shot, which kind of set me up in a wrong way for Hollywood, because I thought, oh great, you shoot it, you write a script, they shoot what you write, this is fantastic. You know, that has never happened since. I mean, Halloween 4 stands alone as kind of the best experience I've had in feature films, because what I wrote actually made it to the screen.
Mustafa was there to give his opinions and advice, but he mostly let me alone in the field.
He was lovely. He was really quiet, very elegant, always kind, very respectful.
Mustafa was very supportive of the script. He really loved the script. That's what was great, is that, you know, when he read it, he raved about it. In fact, there's a scene in H2O where there's a chase inside of a school where the main character's hiding under desks. That was a scene out of Halloween 4 that we didn't have time to shoot. And here he did, you know, here it was then implanted into H2O. So to me, that was a great compliment from Mustafa.
My father and Dwight had a really good, tight relationship. I think my father respected and trusted Dwight a lot, let him do his thing, whereas I think on Dwight's hand, he also had that respect for my father as a director.
We didn't really feel like we were doing anything special, but we were all big horror fans. And the one thing that kind of really got us was it was very, very atmospheric. Dwight really leaned heavily on atmosphere, and that kind of got us into it.
And I had to be crying in the closet, but holding the box with Jamie Lee's stuff in it. I couldn't really get there, so Dwight actually brought me into the closet and was talking to me really stern about what was really going on, and then closed the door and put the light out in the closet, and I just got hysterical because I was completely freaked out about the fact that I was locked in the dark.
Oh, dear God. You know, when you have a director that's just so kind of sets the tone, I think everybody else really takes the initiative, and you know, there wasn't anybody that had an ego or a tantrum or anything. Everyone was just really happy to be there.
I didn't have a single disappointment with the cast. They were all exactly right for their parts. I think, honestly, one of the things that people respond to in this movie is the quality of the casting. I mean, from Beau Starr to Kathleen and Sasha and Ellie and Danielle, and I mean, it's a really cohesive cast, and it came together in an organic way, and I think it makes the movie, honestly.
My death scene was the most challenging part about it was being rigged in the harness. There wasn't any blood. There never was. It was mostly engineered to just have the shock value of being riot gunned through the torso and lifted and then shoved into the door. So what they did is they put a harness on me. They drilled a hole into the door and they stuck a little 10-speed bicycle seat on that, which is pretty uncomfortable no matter what anyway. So they got me up on that so that my legs would be dangling, and then they put a rigging on, and then they pulled me back from the back through a little hole in the wall. So there was a wire and it was kind of cutting in, and so I did that a few times, and then they took me off, and then my kidneys filled up pretty quickly, which was a shock. So that's what's fun as an actor, is that you get to go and play that. You get to go to that place of absolute terror and seeing your life flash before your eyes and being so frightened, but then knowing that you can come out of it, you know, and then it's like, ah, la da da, that's a wrap, you know.
Ready! Get up there, Rachel!
The death of my character, it was really kind of a tribute to the old style Western fight. You know, it was kind of like you do a cross, you know, and you kind of miss and go at it again and go at it again and do it with the gun, and then he gets it. That fight goes back 50 years. And what they did is they put me on a teeter-totter. And so they put the teeter-totter under my butt, and I'm sitting on it, and it's off camera, and the second he lifts me up, they lifted me up, and then he twisted my face and my head, and then I spit the blood. It was a blood capsule, and they put it in my mouth, and I didn't know when I was supposed to do it, and I thought they were gonna cut, because all of a sudden I started gagging on it, and I spit it to the side, and I thought it was okay. We're gonna have to do this again because they were gonna cut, but they kept it.
The final fight on the rooftop was a complicated stunt action camera sequence.
In the original script, Sheriff Ben Meeker actually fought with Michael in the basement of the house. And the fight between the two of them, that's when Ben Meeker dies fighting the shape. The furnace gets knocked over, a fire starts in the basement, and so then the house becomes engulfed in flames, and this is actually what drives Rachel and Jamie toward the roof. And so you end up with this great sequence where the house is in flames, they're on the roof, the shape is on the roof with them. How are they going to survive that? And then that leads to making their way off the roof. But I always wanted that great visual of the flames and the smoke and the house being consumed beneath their feet. I think that would have been amazing. Of course, that would have been probably another $3 million to do something like that.
We considered it on a practical roof. We scouted actual roofs. We thought about how we could do it. We thought about doing it green screen on a stage where we would just be able to have harnesses and have everything under control. But then we thought that might look fake, and if there was one moment in this movie that looked like a green screen or looked phony, then we knew we would throw the audience out of the movie. So the solution that we came up with the production designer was to build the entire roof of a house with the gutters about 6 feet off the ground, which we built in an open field. And it never had that green screen kind of fake feeling because it wasn't. It was all authentic. It was just built.
It was still high enough to be of some danger to the actors, but we had people stationed around that could catch anybody if they did slip.
I did all of the roof stuff except the drop. So I was getting harnessed in and getting turned over, and then I hung there when it was still.
It was precarious at times, but we worked with Danielle. That was the main thing, make sure she felt safe and comfortable. She's a trooper. She did very well.
it was freezing at night. I mean, it would there would be like a dew over the slate on the roof, and then it would ice over. So it kept freezing and Ellie kept slipping. I mean, so all of that stuff is really real.
We had stuntmen all around the bottom, so if anybody fell or slipped, they would fall into, catch pads or into stunt people. It also gave me the freedom to actually shoot without wires.
We were pretty close to being finished, and it was in one of the sequences where I slide down with Danielle on my back.
They made the roof so fast that at the bottom of it, a little staple gun was sticking out, the staple. And when they slid her down the roof, that's when it caught her stomach and it cut it right open all the way down.
You know, I didn't bleed out. There were no intestines showing. I mean, it was not that, it was just a surface wound. But I think the set medic went bonkers just because we had more to shoot. So they patched me up and we went back to work. Literally the whole sequence in the pickup truck was, there were 2x4s underneath the truck and prop guys jumping on the boards to make us look like we were rolling along. So, I mean, it was really effective how it all came together, really seamlessly, because I was there and a lot of that was added after the fact.
The guys fighting on the truck and climbing up on the truck and throwing them off and all that. It was again, our stunt coordinator, Fred Lerner, did a good job. He worked it all out. We had professional stunt guys, so we all worked good together as stunt guys.
So much of that was movie magic, and once all the elements come together and you see it up on screen, it was really cool.
Killing Michael Myers, that was great. We must have shot him 1,000 times. I never expected that to be coming back.
One thing that Al and I were very committed to was this execution of Michael Myers by the police, putting him into his early grave.
We actually threw dynamite into the well at the end of Halloween 4. We cut that, but then they used that sequence in Halloween 5, so that was kind of interesting.
The transfer from Michael to Jamie through the hand was very carefully thought out, and that she was going to then, the twist ending was going to be she had been, in a sense, possessed by Michael's spirit through the bloodline and would come back at the epilogue of the movie.
And to have that shock moment of him turning that corner and seeing her at the top of the stairs standing there with the, with the scissors.
No! No!
This harkens right back to the first film, right back to Michael standing outside. I wanted that exact tie-in, so it's like, it's starting again.
It was, as we all know, something that people have talked about. It was kind of one of the highlights of the movie.
My double actually did the stabbing. They didn't want me to do it, which is interesting considering that the whole movie I'm being chased by somebody with a large knife trying to kill me.
That's why the twist at the end is so overwhelming, is because you just don't expect this girl to be possessed by Michael's devil spirit, and it's why it's so shocking.
And that famous, no of Loomis coming around this, I still get the chills thinking about it. So it's a pretty rad ending of the movie.
When I saw Halloween 5, I was very disappointed they didn't go in the direction that I'd hoped they would, with the legacy and with Jamie and building on that. There was so much potential in the series to go in a very strong and new direction, but sadly, they went in the direction they did.
It was never intended to have her take over the franchise in that way. So how it was going to be resolved in 5 was not entirely clear at the moment, but it definitely was not for her to become the focus of the films.
We screened the movie and had a very successful screening when we cut it all together, and we had a temp mix and we had temp effects in there, and we screened it. We had several screenings, but one of them was at Sony downstairs, and all the cards that we got and some of the reactions we got were that people loved the movie, but it just wasn't quite edgy enough, and they didn't feel like Michael really delivered on his ability to create carnage and wreckage.
Maybe it was because it was a different time and they wanted it to be, I don't know, bloodier, badder, cooler, but it didn't really seem to fit.
There really wasn't a lot of blood in Halloween 4. I think that was a specific choice from the very beginning. I think what they wanted to do was really create the suspense and the fear of what suspense does.
And I think Mustafa felt like the audience was a little bit unfulfilled in that sense. And so he came to me and said, I need to sort of edge up this movie. Where can we do it? Where can we make it organic to the movie?
The additional photography was all shot in Los Angeles. It was unnecessary to go back to Salt Lake City, you know, for those situations. There were predominantly inserts.
The worst problem I had with Mustafa was he hated blood. And I would say to him, you know, it's pretty hard to do a horror film without seeing some blood. And when he'd see blood on a knife, he would go dizzy.
I had a brief meeting with Mustafa, who you know, said, absolutely, I don't want much blood in this. I really want almost no blood. I want it to remain in spirit, very close to the original Halloween film, which had no blood in it, and we just want to maintain that. But we need some more visceral impact. So fine. The first thing was when Michael wakes up. It was an aftermath initially where you just saw a bloody interior and you're sort of like, well, what happened? So we thought it might be kind of fun for Michael to wake up and kill the people inside.
No, I still don't understand.
The now famous thumb in the forehead sequence, which was shocking, and it was very effective. It was also the most economic special effect in the history of the world.
We cut back to what is actually a mechanical hand with a retractable thumb. So it went right into his forehead, and it worked very effectively. Nobody was expecting it. I think that was the kill that basically made everybody jump and say, yeah, okay, I know what kind of movie this is going to be now.
The second one that we did was Michael's hand in the neck of the driver of the pickup truck.
And the one thing that is remembered is Mustafa, who wanted absolutely no blood, was the guy screaming on the set, more blood, more blood, more blood. So that was fun.
And we cut them in, and they didn't feel sort of like overdone, or it didn't feel inorganic. They felt like they were part of the same movie. I was happy about that.
We had actually created another effect that they didn't ultimately use at the mechanics. Initially, he was going to pick up a crowbar and shove it down a guy's throat. I think it was deemed a little bit, nah, it's a little strange. Let's not do that. So that did not happen. So I think that it was an elegant solution to sort of have the death off screen, so that you wouldn't necessarily see what happened. So I don't know. I kind of like enigmas in horror movies anyway.
Alan Howarth, the composer, was all of our choices to come in and create that continuity with Halloween 1, all the way through to Halloween 4. I don't think there was ever really any other discussion that I was aware of that other than that he would do the music. I was certainly happy with the decision. I know that Mustafa wanted him back. We were all excited to have him do it. So there was never, I don't think there was ever any doubt that he would be our guy.
They called me up and said, hey, would you be willing to do the music for Halloween 4? And because John and I were buddies, I kind of really turned to John and says, hey, they called, asked want to do Halloween 4. Is that okay by you? I mean, I want to make sure I wasn't crossing lines here. And he goes, do whatever you want, you know, just do your thing. So hence I launch on Halloween 4. Now, so for my own impressions now, obviously I've inherited all the Halloween music, but I want to put a little more Alan Howarth stamp on what it sounds like, etc. So if you go, let's say, the opening scene of Halloween 4, rather than jumping right into the Halloween theme, I made a whole atmospheric, kind of scary thing. We're going across the wind blowing, the scarecrows, setting the scene. And I really held back on playing that Halloween theme until finally Michael's up. So the arc of Halloween 4 is really Alan Howarth finally does Halloween in his style. And so that's where we started.
I was driving to Westwood, California the night that it premiered, and I saw a huge line of people down the sidewalk, which I assumed was for the Jodie Foster movie or was whatever the big Hollow Studio movie was. As we were driving around the corner, we started to realize that the line that we were seeing was for our movie, for Halloween 4, and we were shocked. We were completely shocked.
And I remember sitting in the audience and just listening to the gasps and the reactions. There's nothing like that, for a writer, is to hear and see the audience reacting to your words and reacting to what they're seeing on screen. Then you know you've done your job. And I felt like we did a really good job.
It was such a big deal. I mean, I was like, oh my God, it's huge. It was something that I think fans, now as an adult, I understand what it was. They had been missing Michael.
It was a #1 on the box office charts for 2 weeks in a row, which was kind of unprecedented for that kind of movie.
The response was, at least commercially, it was fantastic. Critically, it was all over the map. It was 4 stars, 1 star. Loved it, hated it. They ruined it. They brought it back. They're heroes. They're villains. It was like whatever you wanted to read about this movie, you could.
No, I think it was the best of all Halloween movies except for the first one. Dwight Little did a great job in that.
We were lucky. We were all young kids, and we got a great script and a great franchise and people that were really giving 100% to everything behind the scenes and making it the classic that it is.
It's a film that'll stand the test of time, and I'm proud to be an actor who has been in something like that.
It did well. It did very well, and I think that's why they, jumped right on Halloween 5.
Mustafa came to us, came to Dwight and I and said, would we be willing to do Halloween 5? And at the time we were moving on to there was an action movie that I'd written, and Dwight and I were trying to get that off the ground. So we said, we weren't available to do it, and moved on, but we thought we'd set it up in a way that they'd carried on.
But it was going to be impossible to do it better. And I think my feeling was, you know what, I tried as hard as I could. I took my best shot. People seemed to like it, and I should just, let that go. So I always said no to him. I was always flattered to be asked, and I just felt like we just got it right, and let's leave it alone.
And now, looking back, I really wish we had stayed with it, because it would have been nice to follow that line the way I'd originally envisioned.
I mean, no matter what movie I do, it's still gonna be You're the Girl from Halloween. And they're not talking about Halloween 5. I'm like Jamie in the clown costume at the top of the stairs with the scissors. That's really, who I am. It's a classic movie. People tend to like 4 and the first one, and I kind of agree with them. I don't think I knew if I was doing another Halloween after 4, but it came pretty quickly. We shot 1 year, almost to the day after we had finished. So I had both my 11th and 12th birthday on set. But the movie came out in between that time. So it happened very quickly.
Halloween 5 definitely was rushed into production. They tried to capture that same lightning in a bottle that they got on 4. So a lot of things were rushed, and I feel like they didn't assemble some of the key components of the Halloween 4 team that would have been vital. They went a whole new direction.
We got 5, we had a partial screenplay, brought in a new writer, got another version of it. We actually started filming without a completed screenplay.
So it was sort of a whirlwind. I remember getting the script and being so excited because I was the lead now. I mean, I had so much that I got to do and had to do.
And Dominique was a director that was actually recommended to my father by Deborah Hill.
Once I had come on, Dominique was already writing. He was very involved in storyboarding and putting pieces together so they would fit like gears. That didn't necessarily happen once we started filming. So we brought in another writer, Shem Bitterman, and Ramsey Thomas, who's our producer, is also a writer. Although he may not have gotten credit, he was supervising the writing and helping everyone to get their good ideas onto paper.
I don't think I understood what was going on. It had to be explained to me why I was in this hospital and why I couldn't speak. But I think I'd wanted to come back and kill people.
I don't ever recall there being a discussion about Danielle being the killer. It's one of those things that you don't really know until the script, comes to you and stuff.
I don't know. I mean, where would the story go if they didn't have Jamie turn into a sympathetic character. If I was just running around as Michael Myers' sidekick, I don't really know what could have happened. I think they needed to keep Jamie a sympathetic character to have someone to root for.
Most of the film was filmed at night, so we were limited in the number of shooting hours we had.
That whole opening of Halloween 5 was shot in one take because we were running out of time. It was like sun was coming out, we had no time, and we shot that in literally one take. And I remember being freaked out that she had to give me CPR and have her mouth over me. I was a little, I was a little germaphobe.
The shape. The stunt coordinator, Don Pike, was a friend of mine. We'd worked together. And when they came into Salt Lake, he called me and asked me if I was available for work. And originally, I thought they were just asking me to come in, for stunt work. And about 10 minutes later, he calls, he goes, the director wants to meet with you. And I thought, well, this is kind of strange for stunts. And he goes, no, they want to see you for the Michael Myers part. And I go, oh, okay. So I go and I meet with Dominique, and we're in the hotel room. And he says, I want you to walk like wood through water. And so I got up and I did it. He goes, perfect, perfect, you got the part.
Yeah, I was disappointed, but it was a director's preference, and Mustafa wanted me to do 5. But I did get in the opening sequence in Halloween 5, so I can claim 4, 5, and 6.
I was bummed out that George wasn't going to be back, but I was so excited to go. And then I met Don, and he immediately bonded with me, and he used to give me neck rubs, and he'd swing me around. And he also always had the mask off until we were ready to go, and he made me feel really safe.
They didn't want me to study any of the Michael Myers before because they didn't want me to have a preconceived notion. Dominic had a very distinct way that he wanted to film it. I figured that I was closer to Michael Myers than anybody because I lived in Illinois. We were probably about the same age, and I like to kill.
I thought that the mask looked beat up, but then I think I rationalized it by feeling like, well, he just went through all of this stuff in the other one, so it would probably look a little bit different because it's so pasty white in 4 that in 5 it's had a blue-gray kind of tone to it, so it looked completely different. But I think as a kid I just went, oh, well, it's probably just old.
Greg Nicotero had designed it after his face, but my head was a little bit bigger than his, so we had to go in and do moldings. What we did was Mustafa didn't want to be able to see the eyes. So they took nylon stockings and put it over the eyes, which cuts down your vision quite a bit.
I mean, the mask looks different in every movie. It's definitely the start of the deterioration of the Michael Myers mask. 5 definitely sets it off. And then it just continued to go, and now it's a shred of nothing. There's some hair and a little bit of, of latex, unfortunately.
Ellie, this is your making of Halloween 5 tape you wanted.
I was tapped pretty early to be involved in 5, and I knew I would be. So the script arrived at my home, and I had a suspicion that I wouldn't make it through this one. No! I didn't quite expect to be killed off so early. And the way it was written was that I was supposed to get scissors shoved down my throat. And I just thought for Rachel, it was too undignified. It didn't sit right. And so, I made a fuss about that, and they rewrote it so it was a little bit less graphic.
1, 2, 3, go.
I'm dying, I'm getting up.
I remember the vibe on set and Ellie being really upset on the day that she had her death scene.
I went from being in the shower, running outside in a towel, to getting killed. It was like, there wasn't much there. I thought there was no way that Rachel Carruthers could have lived through 4 and have outsmarted Michael Myers in so many ways and go so easily. That did not ring true at all.
I was sad when I read it that Ellie wasn't going to be around more. And then I got to set, and Wendy Kaplan and I had this incredible bond.
These are the 2 stars of hell. Hey, get over there. 2 stars. Oh!
You're so special.
I really loved the character. Not like someone that would pop up in every movie, especially sort of really different from this genre, I felt like. So I guess, the bad girl part of me. It was fun to be able to express that.
Symbolically, she did take over the sister role, but you know, energetically, we were so different. Her part, I think, was so deliberately out there for whatever reason.
Poor Wendy, I mean, she had big shoes to fill. People loved Rachel, and they did not like Tina. So maybe sometimes, you know, I was annoying as Tina, and I said things that were sort of off-center. And
I'm never sensible if I can help it.
from a character standpoint, I do think the fact that I was willing to just say whatever I wanted and be this crazy person, it didn't always jive maybe with what people were expecting as the heroine.
Yeah, maybe you don't even need to wear a mask, baby.
I knew Wendy before I came, and I didn't know she was cast in the movie, but when I drove up in the car to the hotel, she knew I was in it, and she came running out, and I'm like, oh my God, and she's like, yeah, I'm playing your girlfriend, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm stoked about that.
I'm ready, son. Ow! Bruised but ready.
I'd always been a cult fan of the horror genre, and to get an opportunity to be in a horror film, I couldn't pass it up. So studied my butt off, went in there with my best stupid Spitz laugh I could muster, and fooled him into giving me the role.
I connected with Sammy so much when I went in and read, and I felt like I was so her, and I was just so like automatically anywhere I could be. I mean, I was just Sammy, like inside out, upside down, you know, whatever.
She was very, you know, a lot of fun to deal with and see where she was going, because you wouldn't know from one minute to the next.
Jamie? Max?
You know, me being mute, I mean, I get it, kinda, but when something traumatic happens, kids, you know, sometimes it's likely that would happen, but I don't know why they couldn't have me talk. They were trying to get artsy maybe, or trying to be real, or think outside the box, and I think sometimes things are just better left. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
It got overly complicated when it didn't need to. That was my sense about Jamie being mute.
These are for you.
And then the stuttering sidekick, and there was definitely some cheese factor to Halloween 5.
Jamie, are you okay?
I picked Jeffrey. Like, we were in New York and we had auditioned boys.
My character had this infamous stutter. You know, we talked a lot about why Billy had a stutter and at what moments they wanted the stutter to be more pronounced than others.
You don't even know where she is. But I do.
And Dominique was very aware of that and very careful to make sure that I was staying true to the nature of stuttering, in that when you're more frantic, it gets worse. When you're a little more comfortable, it's easier to speak, etc.
The two kids, it was sort of a symbiotic type of relationship, because one stuttered, the other one isn't talking, you know, and yet they were communicating the best of anybody.
They say in Hollywood you should never work with kids or animals, so I guess that's the way to mitigate that. Have one kid be a stutterer and the other one not talk at all.
I've seen horror movies with actors, kid actors, and a lot of them were not very good. I guess I just had a lot as a child that kind of came up.
Everyone on the film was so wonderful and so aware of the fact that Danielle and I were children, and were very patient with us and careful. Obviously, she was carrying this film so much, and I thought the way she handled that and the way that she led everyone on the film was really wonderful.
You sense something, don't you? Tell me what you know. Right.
Donald and I were much closer in this. Again, he only came on set for like a week or so I didn't have, we had a lot of stuff in a very, short amount of time.
He had difficulty in getting in the country. The head of the Utah Film Commission helped us to get the proper visa for Donald Pleasance, because his visa had expired.
One night he did come, and I had been wrapped for the night. And it's a scene in the woods. I'm supposed to be in the woods, but he can't see me, he's yelling. And he came and he knocked on my door, and he goes, "Mike, I didn't impose on you that I would like you to be out there. Even though I can't see you, I want to know that you're there." And I said, "Sure."
I was scared of him too. Donald Pleasance yelling in your face and shaking you. I was like, oh my God. I wondered what the smell was that was on Donald Pleasance's breath. And now I know, as an adult, it's bourbon.
You know, it's an interesting thing for someone because he has all this stature and he's doing a horror movie, but he treated it like it could have been, you know, Shakespeare.
When we were doing the scene where we're on the staircase and he's trying to talk me out of it and take the knife away from me, well, Donald wanted to do the stunts himself. He wanted to be able to, you know, hit that window so they could see the expression. So we did the window, I slammed him into that, but they wouldn't let him do the one over the railing. They thought that was a little too much.
I was a child, he was as an older gentleman. We would sit at dinner together, you know, everyone, and he would tell great stories of his wonderful career, which at 11 years old I did not appreciate as much as I would love to be at that dinner table now.
On set we had something called a triple banger where there's one trailer but there's 3 different rooms. One was for Jeffrey Landman, who played Billy, one was for me, and one was for when we did school. I remember seeing Donald's like huge trailer and thinking, oh my gosh, there's a bed in there, like how cool is that? Donald rapped and he said, my trailer stays and it's for Danielle. She's the star of this movie now. So he made them keep this big ass, like 40-foot trailer for me. And I just thought it was the coolest thing.
Strikes one up, yeah, okay, there you go.
We had taken over the hotel we were at. We took offices there, we took rooms there.
You're on location with a fistful of money, and the whole place is dry on Sunday because it's a Mormon state. So we got in our partying when we could.
It was a party happening nightly in our room.
I mean, we were out in the hallway of the hotel, you know, at like 8 o'clock in the morning, running around, with music, and we probably trashed a couple hotel rooms. It was like our version of like a frat party.
There was a lot of liquor, and we would dance till the wee hours of the morning and then get up with like 3 or 4 hours worth of sleep.
2 o'clock in the morning, we're shooting tomorrow. This is the exact last night we're gonna do this, right, Mark?
Like, I can see certain things in the movie where I'm like, ooh, that was a long night. Look at those bags, you know?
And there was this little bar, this like big cabinet where they kept all the little liquor bottles. And it had like a latch on it, but it would open just a teeny bit, and I was the only one that had a small enough arm to reach in and grab the bottles for everybody. And we would party in my room. So I was one of the gang.
She was like a little buddy. I mean, she was with us all the time.
A lot of dancing, a lot of crazy music, a lot of people hooking up with each other, and I'll leave names out of it.
And hopefully that spirit of genuine care for each other and the fun that we had making the movie, hopefully that comes across in the film as well. We really did enjoy each other.
What do you think? Orders are orders. I look like a life-threatening situation to you?
I didn't see any semblance of comedy. And the role that me and Dave were like these 2 clown cops. I thought, this is a little bit of an odd choice. It's unusual for this type of series, but hey, job's a job, you know, make it work.
Those guys did a great job with it, and we all sort of saw it as a way to kind of open it up a little bit.
Definitely not funny.
Comedy is actually tough, because how do you do it without being cliche or trite or corny? And I took a little pass at it. I made some goofy, kind of cartoon music that went with it.
All clear.
Nothing above, nothing below.
I wasn't expecting that at all. You know, I realized that we were the comedy relief, but I didn't realize that Dominique was going to go over, you know, take that extra leap and actually add in these sound effects that were these goofy sound effects.
Fortunately, we're lousy cops. Sorry.
Boop, blah, 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 boop, honka, honka. Yeah.
You know, you've got a Halloween scary groove, and all of a sudden this thing that's just like a cartoon cue. So that was an odd piece. And they kept it, so I guess it worked.
The performers played enough of the humor without this music that sort of adds this silliness that I don't think is necessarily there or even really appropriate.
When I came out of the house for the first time, when Ellie called the police, Pretty Woman, I thought, wow, it'd be great if this cop is attracted to her. It would make the scene a little more fun if I'm trying to impress her, especially since I'm being cut off a great deal by my partner Dave, which is going to make it an irritant to me.
It's what we're here for.
Rescue cats.
Find dogs.
That's our job.
And we love it.
Halloween 5 felt like a different movie altogether. It didn't have the same vibe. Dominique was very eccentric, and just the way he talked about things.
He definitely had a way of making you feel more connected to material that frankly some people might have thought or dismissed as trite.
At first, you know, a lot of things he said, it was kind of off the wall, you know, like wood through water. But when he gave you different things, you could kind of picture it and you would think about it, and then it would take on a life of itself.
Every time me and Dave, my partner, walked away from camera, he would always say, when you walk away from camera, I want you to walk like penguins. Penguins, you get me? He wanted to add a goofiness to these characters. So he thought if we waddled away, it would add that element of clownishness. So oftentimes we were walking away from camera and I would hear, just as we turned, penguins, penguins.
Well, you know, he's French. So that kind of says it all right there.
Everything he would say to me was, it's about sex. Sexy. And I was like, okay, I'm walking my dog. You know, he was all like, sexy, sexy. We want sexy. Rachel wasn't big in the sexy department, and that's kind of what made her the girl next door. And I think that's why the characters liked her. We had the sexy girls, but my character wasn't one of them.
And there was no more sort of telling Dominique-ism in the film than when he asked Ms. Glynn and I to come and rehearse the love scene in his hotel room the night before we shot it. I think we were both like, you want us to do what? No, yeah, you come. I will walk you through the way I see it. The lighting has to be perfect in your face and the hands, and I just want to walk you through the choreography. And we got there and we just kind of worked out the beats, and it couldn't have been sort of more technical, and there really was no passion involved. It was put your hand there, move there so she can do this, if she's looking into the key light. And so I appreciated that about him, his sort of technical approach to the filmmaking aspect, but then his ability to kind of draw you into his world and make it seem like a fun place to be.
I was really close with Dominique. I remember going to his house in LA and we ate dinner sitting on pillows, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. You know, he was just very French. So I'd never met anybody before that was European.
Well, Dominique's fun, a lot of fun. Good Frenchman.
I love that he brought something different, probably, to the movie, which some people really responded to and some people didn't.
I remember a lot of things changing at the last minute. For example, for all the rehearsal process and for the first day of shooting, Billy was supposed to be a BMX bike racer.
There was a bunch of stuff between Billy and Jamie where Billy was supposed to like save her life and we were riding bicycles. It was all this shit.
We would sit around and say, that sounds good. We could do that. We filmed them. They didn't all make it into the film, but we shot them.
So it was a lot of stuff like that, of things being changed very drastically without rhyme or reason. What was on the script wasn't necessarily what you shot that day.
I know Mustafa and Dominique kind of had a butting of heads towards the end. That's why they changed this and that. And I don't know if Dominique was trying to take over, or, I mean, I didn't get involved in the politics.
But I remember the biggest drama being about Samantha and Tina.
Something happened with wardrobe and Wendy's character Tina, and then she was supposed to play the devil, I was going to play something else, and then all of a sudden she's playing the French maid, and then I'm devil girl.
They didn't want the heroine of the movie to be the devil because they felt you wouldn't really feel for her. as much. So instead they made the girl that has sex the devil.
I loved my costume. I was so happy to have that costume, though. It was really fun.
Clean up room service.
Spitz dresses up like Michael Myers at the Tower Farm party to play a prank on the cops. But how does he even know who Michael Myers is or what he looks like, and where does he get that mask? Like, you start poking holes in this film and you're gonna end up with some Swiss cheese, mister.
My experience is that when you are working on a film, there's a lot of changes midstream. It's almost never a good thing. There's something about the foundation that begins to get really flimsy.
There were some scenes that I did that we reshot that I wish were put back into the film.
There was a very bizarre character who was called Dr. Death, I believe, and it was this skinny, kind of funny character actor who had a parakeet. And Michael Myers wanders into his house. I guess they were trying to reference Frankenstein and the Blind Man. Michael Myers walks in his house and falls on the bed.
And he puts the tattoo on me, and there was a whole bunch of, witchcraft things, spells and whatnot. And on Halloween, I come back to life, put the mask on, and over this altar, there was this sharpened rock. So I get up, grab him, take him up over my head, I break his back, throw him on the altar, and I put the rock through his chest. I thought that was kind of a nice scene.
Everything was put into that opening scene, and it didn't work. And Mustafa saw it, and he hated it. They decided that they would reshoot it. They would reshoot the opening, and they did.
We just had a distress call from the clinic. They haven't been able to reach them again. There were 4 men up there.
And there was a whole sequence where I killed the SWAT team, which never made it to the screen.
It was just bloody, 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 trying to shoot down Michael Myers in front of that hospital with police cars and actors and stuntmen. And that became a real bone of contention for the director and the executive producer.
For Chicago. Let's see, we're going to go to Bloomington, Redfield, Evanston, and then final destination, Chicago.
The Man in Black was never in the script. The Man in Black showed up midway.
That was kind of interesting. I mean, I wasn't really told who it was, but I played him some of the times.
There were people that would always come to set and watch, people in the neighborhood. And there was a guy that would always come wearing these slickers and hat. And I think that I don't know if it was Dominique or somebody else came up with an idea that they wanted to add an extra element to it, another character. Who is he? What's the symbolism? And I have no clue, except that the movie was not going as planned and it was lacking something, and they decided to add in this guy midway through to make up for things that just were falling short, I guess.
This Man in Black, this would fix all the problems. The problems it fixed and the problems it created were fairly well balanced. And the hope was, in part 6, it would be resolved. I remember Don taking me to the side and saying, "Rick, what the are they doing here? This doesn't make any sense."
They shot other scenes. It's like, well, why are we filming these? And he goes, well, this will go into the part 6.
Don't worry, Don. It'll all make sense when it comes out in the wash. You'll see. I mean, what was I going to do?
The only thing I vaguely remember was that they said there was going to be some connection between him and Michael via they had the same tattoo.
They said that, it was sort of like, in my mind, I think this, but like Raising Cain, that either it was going to be like a twin, an alter ego, or during the year that they did this incantation and then it became another being.
I do know, though, for a fact that at the end of 5, no one had any clear vision what the Man in Black was. Maybe Dawn had an idea, Dominique, Dan Farron's at watching it in the theater somewhere. Everyone had their idea, but there was no one clear direction of what was going to happen.
We were filming in the summer. Pumpkins don't come out until Halloween. So we tried gourds, we tried squash, and what ultimately worked well were watermelon. Rob Draper, who was the director of photography, is a very capable guy and provided really good opportunities for reveals, for angles on things, for drama within the shot itself.
There's a shot in the movie of me just almost making love to that Camaro that I drove. and how I touched it and I wiped it clean, and people really seem to like that one particular shot. And also when I got, you know, a pitchfork to the head.
3, 2, 1, action.
For many, many, many years, I had one of the stunt heads until my wife just couldn't take it anymore. And she's like, you have to get rid of that. That's really creepy.
The Camaro, when I was driving it, there was something strange about the car. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it's like, you know, there's something just weird about this car.
In retrospect, I feel like I was in the car, I was always creeped out.
And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, the transportation captain, the guy who found the car, told me that they got it from a family that the girl had committed suicide in the car. I don't know if that vibe was there, but there was always something strange about that car.
If you remember when Michael Myers takes Tina, he gets her in the car and they stop at a convenience store. When we shot the convenience store scene, they didn't have a lot of extras available because it was 2 or 3 in the morning. So I was there waiting for another scene to be shot, and they asked if I would put on a costume and play an extra in front of the convenience store. So if you see that scene, I'm dressed in a cat suit with a mask and a dark wig, and I look pretty hot.
The Cro-Magnon, the Brute mask, that was sort of thrown in, and yes, at one time they wanted me to wear a Ronald Reagan, because he thought that would be funny. But I don't think they could get approval for that one.
When I was in the car with Don, he did creep me out. I mean, it's amazing what one can do behind a mask. And he did all these little subtle things with his eyes and his movements.
When I was talking to Dominique, he goes, what can you give me as far as reaction? I go, well, stay on my hands. So if you watch, I'm gripping the wheel, and when she comes over and she kisses me, and then she has that reaction. And Dominique's like, oh, yes, that's it.
That's where the European filmmaker, you know, truly, you know, you got to see it on screen. It was lit just brilliantly, so beautiful.
I got to get a pitchfork in the back while having sex in a barn. Did I get to finish though? Only I know for sure.
One part in the barn that did get difficult, the application that Greg Nicotero and Mark Maitre had on Matthew Walker, who played Spitz.
I had to be laying on an ironing board with half my torso kind of hanging off the ironing board, propping myself up over her with the fake chest kind of coming down at an angle there. Everything had to be sort of just right, and they made up my neck and made everything up to look like it, and I'm trying to be as naturalistic as possible. And we can only do it once, we think, so we call action, and the prongs come through, and because the foam was of such high quality, it formed around the prongs very quickly, so the blood couldn't penetrate through the holes that were made. The blood just hit the back of the appliance and ran down. And we tried to do it again and set up for a second shot, but again, the same thing happened. The prongs came through, and the blood just kind of fell behind, so they said, we got what we needed, we're moving on, and nobody was happier than me because I could get off the ironing board.
I grew up on a farm, and if you notice, there's a lot of farm implements. So, you know, I was showing Dominique, okay, we can do this, we can do that, and when I used the mowing side, he goes, oh, the Grim Reaper, that's wonderful, that's wonderful.
I was not supposed to get killed the way I did in the film. And I went to Dominique, and I said, can we see some balls on Sammy, you know, one time that she's gonna fight back, you know, she's gonna try and get back at Michael Myers. So Dominique said, great idea. And so that's why I pulled a pitchfork out of Spitz's back, and that's why I take off after Michael. You son of a bitch! When I go back against the barn wall there, I hit my arm pretty hard and a nail went in it, so I had to go and get a tetanus shot. Michael did an incredible job killing me.
That sounded different.
As far as my death scene goes, it was never a shot how we got killed. It was the aftermath. You just saw us all bloodied up in the car. I guess it's left to your imagination.
I mean, the scene where I'm running through the woods with Dawn, you know, driving the car, I had food poisoning that day. It was like throwing up in between takes. And I remember we just went over it 2 or 3 times of here's gonna be your path around that tree, and then you're gonna go over here. So you're like, okay. And you start running and they start filling the area with this thick, dense smoke, and Don's got the lights on in the car and I'm running in front of him, he can't see me. I mean, there's times where I watch that movie and I am so close to the front of that car. I can't believe that I actually did that.
We didn't use a lot of stunt people. Very seldom did we use anything.
When I'm running through the field at the end, he, is driving and
I'm right on her, and the camera's in the back. We got the lights on her. Take 3, she turns around so the camera can see her, and she's wearing a cape and she trips and falls, and I drove over her. I mean, I stopped it right on top of her. I heard her scream.
luckily he's a stunt driver and so nothing happened.
It was close.
When we did the scene where he drives into the tree, they invited everyone to the set to watch that big explosion. And everyone was so excited that it went so well that they never yelled cut. So Donald was inside the burning car for longer than I think anyone should have been.
I love how I died because I felt like I saved a life. And I love that I got this opportunity to be a heroine in that one moment.
The premiere, when she died, they applauded.
There was a scene where I'm in the laundry chute, and even that scene, actually, Dawn was stabbing it with a real knife, and I was in there, and I was not harnessed, and it was an air conditioning duct. I would sort of get in and wedge myself in there and put my feet up, and I just fit enough to where like I couldn't move. But then I was, I would let my legs go and I would hold on and try to grab at it. And again, there was nothing that was holding me up from completely falling and eating shit and hitting the bottom of this thing.
And we marked out different places inside, and then I had marks on the outside where I could put the knife where she would be safe.
Dom would come in and, okay, now make sure you keep your legs above here, Danielle. And I would go, okay, and I would hold my legs up and he would just jam a butcher knife through. So it's fucking crazy to think about it.
But if she slipped or something, she was a real trooper. I have to give her that.
There's a moment where my leg falls down and he's supposed to get me through the leg with the knife, and then he pulls it out and you see me like screaming. And then the next scene when I come out of the chute and I fall onto the floor, if you notice I have a huge gash in my leg and there's like blood all down my tights. So we didn't reshoot the aftermath, but they completely nixed me getting stabbed in the shin from the movie. I had that leg for a while actually, and I gave it to a cousin of mine and he lost it.
I think I worked on part 5, it was a matter of days. And then I think they had to bring me all the way back so I could be the corpse in the attic.
You want to fly back and shoot this scene, and then we're going to have a huge final after party. And I'm like, yeah, why not?
Let me see.
The only time that I thought it was weird was when he took his mask off. You can see that he doesn't look like what Michael Myers should look like because he's, Indian, Cherokee Indian.
Dominic thought that Danielle and I looked enough that we could be like father and daughter. I had long hair at the time, it was dark, and we had similar features.
You're just like me.
And when we shot that scene, I had to cry.
I think because I was so close with Dawn that we had this bond anyway. I just remember feeling emotional during the scene, and it's a great moment of vulnerability. I mean, I think you have to sort of show that in those characters for them to be somewhat likable, or at least know where they've come from and why they've ended up being the way that they are.
They had a prosthetic ready in case they wanted to do a full face, but Dominic thought it was more effective just to see the one eye. And that when she reaches up, and this goes to the part 6 too, that they were shooting, that they were going to show more of it in part 6. That, all of us would, kind of gel together.
I remember being scared that I was going to catch on fire because I had this big dress on that had all this shit sprayed on it that was like flammable. And I thought, oh God, I have a gallon of hairspray on my dress and I'm totally flipping out of this coffin and there's candles everywhere. I'm going to get caught on fire. So that was, I kind of needed him to be there to make me feel like
I was protected.
We're doing the fight scene. I do the thing with Loomis and they drop the chain, which was heavy as hell. We had a rubber 2x4, but it had a PVC pipe in it. And if you hit it on the 4 side, it was padded. And on the 2 side, there was less. And so he was getting a little bit tired, kept doing it. I mean, he did it, Don Pike did it, Dominique even did it. You know, hit me with that 2x4. But at one point, he turned it just a little bit and caught me on the nose and broke my nose. And Don came over to me and he goes, "Did he get you?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to stop?" I go, "Nah. I mean, I've been hit before. Let's go." In the film, Donald Pleasence, this was supposed to be his last film. And it was written and we shot it that way and he was supposedly dead. He wasn't going to come back for part 6. He's laying on top of me and I'm supposedly dying, he's dying. And the lights are flashing and he whispers to me, he goes, "Now I get it. I abused you as a child."
National Guard will take him to a maximum security facility where he'll stay till the day he dies.
That shot, I always go, oh, Michael's just sitting in jail. I mean, I don't know. There could have been a better ending.
The ending of 5, I think similarly to 4, what they were probably trying to get was some kind of cliffhanger ending, you know, that would try and bring the fans back. Who is this? What is this? What happened? So I think that was probably the idea, what they were going for with the Man in Black, but I think it wasn't successful.
So when it came to do Halloween 5, the director, Dominic Orthen-Girard, kind of wants to go back to Halloween 1, in his mind at least. So he says, "I really want you to feature the piano. I know you do a lot of synth stuff, but I really want this to be a piano-driven score." Kept it simple. I remember at the beginning of 5 was this whole pumpkin chop thing. It was the first time that I kind of went wild myself in that opening scene. So I had loaded the Halloween theme into the sampler, and now because you've got the whole piece of music on one key, you could go dun 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 all the way up. So I actually kind of went for the craziness with the chopping of the pumpkin in that opening scene, and actually added the slicing sounds as a percussion instrument. Dominic was a little more involved. He would come over a lot. So I'd say where Dwight visited 3 or 4 times, I saw Dominic probably 10 or 15 times. He'd like twice a week, "How's it going, how's it going?" kind of monitoring and giving me a little more guidance for where he wanted to see the accents go. But nice guy, really liked him. He kept it fun.
I couldn't make it to LA for the premiere, so Mustafa sent my mom a bunch of money and said, create a premiere for her in New York. So my mom rented out a theater and I got all my friends that were underage and we all went to the theater to watch it. And there was probably like 40 or 50 of us. So we hooted and hollered and cheered and thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I think that as I get older and I see the 2 movies back to back and talk to the fans, they still love it, but they always say that they liked 4 better.
I think 5 dissipated the interest level of the really diehard fans. That's why it didn't do as well at the box office. And I know, for some reason, 12 minutes into the film, audiences were seen like running for the exits. So I don't know.
There were certain things that just didn't seem to jibe and certain things that they didn't seem to take care of.
It seemed like in the rush to get it done, maybe there was a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but it's definitely a unique film amongst the series. It's got its own look and style and feel.
The opportunity to do this film with so many creative people in one place really benefited the film. If it was a standalone project, I think it would have done very well.
I think it's still some of the best work I've done as an actor. The movie's a good movie outside of it being a sequel to Halloween 4. I mean, if you just watched it outside and it wasn't Michael Myers, I think that it is a good movie.
People are still watching it and still having a great time. Whether they love it or they hate it, they still watch it. you know, so it's doing something for people.
I get phone calls and texts and emails every year at Halloween when the film plays. I saw you in a barn get a pitchfork in the back, dude.
I'm glad that aficionados of the Halloween series eat it up. They seem that they can't get enough.
The fans are always, they're the best. And it's great to go out and they know it inside and out. They know everything about the movie. They know more about it than I do.
I came to this convention and I was like, is anybody gonna remember me? It was kind of an oddity to me. Like, why would I go? They want my autograph? Are you kidding? Take a picture with me? Why? It was 25 years ago, and when I got there, it was a delight. People knew who I was. They wanted to take pictures, sign autographs. It was a blast. And again, I was really shocked that it's got this huge following.
The fans are incredible. The franchise has been so nice to me, and we're all family. I mean, it's something that once you're a part of it, you are a part of it, and there is a legacy there, and you will definitely carry that with you for the rest of your life.
I love that. I love that something I did 25 years ago as an 11-year-old kid still resonates with people all these years later, and people care so passionately about.
I really enjoy watching it, and I really love to see all of us in the movie, and I think it's really clear that we're all having like a great time.
And it's changed my life in the sense of that I feel kind of honored to be a part of something big.
I moved to LA after Halloween 5, and I think I thought that it was going to happen pretty quickly. And when it didn't happen, maybe we'd, asked a couple of times, and I was very close with the Accods. So when I was living in New York, I would come and stay with them during the summers because his daughter Lana was my best friend growing up. So I would come and like live in his house. I still can remember the smell of his library I just wrote to Malik the other day that I can still smell your dad's cherry tobacco in his pipe. Like, I will never forget the smell of that and his mom's, Mustafa's wife's perfume. But, so I'd spent a lot of time at the house and with the family, and I think I just thought it was gonna happen, and then it never really did, and I don't know if I just stopped asking about it at some point, and then kind of forgot about it. I didn't think about it at all, about them doing a 6. I just thought, okay, maybe it's just not gonna happen. And then I went on to did other things, and then lo and behold, many years later, my agent called me, and she said, in Breakdowns today, Breakdowns is like a news bulletin that goes out to all the agents that they're casting this movie and they're looking for this type of person, and then agents say, I've got this person. So they sent out this breakdown for Jamie, and they wanted someone over 18 to play, 17, and they had my picture, my headshot that they wanted to look alike. So my agent called me and said, they're casting Halloween 6 and they're trying to get someone over 18 to play your character. Obviously, when you're over 18, you can work longer hours, you could do other things, don't have to go to school. I was 17 though. So my agent called up Paul Freeman and Mustafa and said, Danielle wants to do this, and what can we do to make it happen? And they said, we need to hire someone over 18, so get her emancipated. So you basically have to go before a court, and you have to prove to the judge that you're an adult, and you're essentially like, I'm an adult now, and you say, I'm gonna move out of the house from my mom, you're an adult, and then they could work you like an adult. So I did that, hired an attorney. It cost a couple $1,000s to make it, to do it, going back to the court 2 or 3 times to get approved, and done. So I go, finish, sit down, have a meeting with everybody, and I remember everything starting to change. Like, the way that everybody was talking about the new script and things that it just wasn't, I remember leaving thinking, oh, these people don't know Halloween. Like, this isn't, I don't get it. Wait, I'm confused. So I'm pregnant with my uncle's baby? Like, I just didn't understand what had shifted. I thought, oh my God, this is not what I wanted to do. I don't want to die like this. At that point, I'm a teenager now, so I'm old enough to know sort of what's cool and what's not cool. We went back and forth quite a bit, and it just was like, it just wasn't working from the very beginning. And then business affairs, which is, you know, people that are supposed to make the deal with actors. They don't have any connection to the project. That's just their job. And they called, and I just remember being on the phone and them being like, we're gonna offer you, you know, whatever scale it was, like $800 a week or $1,000, 1 week of work for the week. And I was like, oh my God, but I have all of this, I just paid like $3,000 or $4,000 to be able to do the movie, and wait, what? And it just got really fucked up. And I remember Paul getting on the phone with me and somebody else, maybe it was Dan Ferens, and them sort of saying, please, 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 you know, we're gonna make this work, we're gonna make this right, and just feeling like their hands were tied. And I tried to make it happen, and then we had one more phone call, and I'll never forget, the woman on the other line said to me, your character is a scale character. You die in the first act. We're not giving you any more money. And I went, I guess I mean nothing to you then. Okay. I just wanted to put the money back in my bank that I spent to do the movie, which you guys are trying to replace me to begin with anyway. And I fought for it because I didn't want to have someone play Jamie. And okay, so I'm done. And that was really what had happened. And I met JC Brandy, who played Jamie, years later through mutual friends. And she was just like, the shit that I got for replacing you, people fucking hated me. And I've gone on the record by saying, JC's my friend, I've taught her dance class, like she's my friend. And I don't want anyone to be mean to her because she didn't she didn't kick me to the curb and like stomp on me and replace me. But Dan Ferens and I do talk about it every once in a while about, we have this fantasy of going back and redoing Halloween 6 the way we both thought that it should have been done. People automatically assume that I wanted some crazy amount of money. It's not like I'm demanding of anything. I just, when you have been asked to do something and then they insult you by saying, you're a piece of shit, you die in the first act. I don't give a fuck that you were in 2 other Halloween movies. Who cares? And it was like, whoa, oh my God. I was just in such shock. And then you've got your team going, you know what, we're gonna pass, let them come back, and this is ridiculous, and they put you through the ringer, and it's been a big fucking runaround. And I walked away, and they never came back. But I feel like, in retrospect, looking back on it now, that if I would have been Jamie in Halloween 6 and I would have died, maybe I wouldn't have come back for the new Halloweens. Because there was a part of people that still wanted to have Jamie back. And I think that that maybe Rob Zombie felt the same way, and that's why I ended up coming back and, rebooting it.
Well, after Halloween 5, which still did pretty well, but it wasn't as successful as 4 at the box office, I think everyone sort of took a step back and wanted to reassess where things were. And flash forward 5 or 6 years, there was a bidding war actually to do the rights. My father had let the rights lapse back to the original rights holders. And it became a bidding war of who was going to do 6. John Carpenter had aligned with New Line, so it came down to basically a sealed bid decision. And we went in with the Weinsteins, and lo and behold, they were able to seal it, and off we went. I recall Dan Ferens getting involved in the project as just this relentless, diehard fan of the series. It was encouraging to see, he came in with his whole pitch, really developed very intelligently, and I think it caught everybody's eye.
Jamie, come to me.
I think in 6 we were up against, or more so Dan maybe, was up against answering questions, and we often have that problem when we do sequels. So Dan had, who is this man in black? What is this tattoo? And one thing that Dan's script answered was what these things were. So it was, Dan's script was where Curse of Thorn came in. And the script, went in a way that, with the whole cult thing, was something that maybe was a little ahead of its time, because it was kind of going into this paranormal, supernatural kind of horrors that we would see later on. But for the classic slasher film, it might not have been, in retrospect, the best fit. But it had elements that were going to take this series into a new way.
Jamie, come with me if you want to save your baby.
The character of Jamie Lloyd was always intended to be a part of it. There were negotiations to get Danielle back, and it was very important to me because I knew she was a fan favorite and she was beloved in the series. As I recall it, there was a breakdown between the studio and her representation. And I think in retrospect, it was such a minor distance that they were apart on this deal that it was really a shame. We all felt horrible. I think Danielle felt betrayed, rightfully so. And I think the studio's idea was, well, it's a small part and we can recast it. And I think in retrospect, it was a big mistake. Although I love J.C. Brandy and she's a dear friend, but I think for the continuity of the series, we really should have had Danielle.
I had seen a little film that Joe Chappelle did. He was from Chicago, and we all liked it well enough to bring him out and talk with him and decide that he was the right guy to do this.
Once Joe Chappelle was chosen to direct, we were all excited, and he was a young, talented director. So by the time we got up to Utah, I think the problem with 6, unfortunately, was that there was a lot of different visions of how the film should be. And you had a talented director, but he had the studio pulling his ear on one side, my father and our company on one side, and perhaps the writer on one side. So I think he was trying to answer to a lot of bosses or answer to a lot of different visions. So in retrospect, what hurt Halloween 6 was that it was not clearly drawn out. The vision was not clearly agreed upon. It was sort of, here's a script and let's go, and it's going to work out somehow. But it was just, could have used a little more forethought and a little more pre-planning, I felt.
Michael, what have they done to you?
The legend of the producer's cut. It's funny in a way that it's called that, but it's fittingly so because we finished the entire film, mixed it, and we did have screenings actually, which is quite normal. You have market research screenings and you sort of poll the audience and get some feedback, and it's a normal process that we usually do. And at that point, you take the steps to adjust if you feel you need to, and we've done them on most of the films. I suppose it's called that because it was what we were fighting for. Yes, we wanted to make some changes to it, but that was the version that the producers held to, studio and the director got their way, and that's what came out. Weinsteins were definitely involved in production on 6, every step of the way from casting, and I think there was a lot of autonomy on the Halloween films before that, so it was a new dynamic that you were now answering to studio heads as well as all the other department heads. So that was new to get that working relationship, how to get that dynamic down. We all knew that it needed some work and some help. So then it was the decision of what direction that additional footage or help that the product needed would take. Studio had one very definitive idea, and my father had an idea, and Joe Chappelle was kind of, I believe, more in the middle. What it came down to is the studio sort of putting their foot down and saying, well, this is what we want. We want more blood, more gore, a different explanation of the cult. And this is what we want, we're paying the bills. And it became actually a legal fight. There was going to be an injunction on the release, and all this really unnecessary infighting. And Joe, at that time, it was his film, and he went with the Weinsteins and he shot these extra scenes, which we actually weren't a part of. And I don't blame him, he wanted to finish his film.
We just had to literally sit it out. Mustafa and I and Malik were told by our lawyers, just to vacate.
In retrospect, I really wish that my father hadn't relented, but you had a release date, you had a lot of money invested in the film, and all this work put into it. So we did come to a settlement, we did agree, and the version that went out was the Weinstein's version. The theatrical version of Halloween 6 I was not happy with, for sure. I think it went overboard in terms of some gore and a lot of other things. Although I'm reluctant to criticize anyone's film because, you know, I know what it's like to try and make one. So the hardest thing to do is create, the easiest thing to do is criticize. But personally as a filmmaker, I wasn't completely happy with that version. And I wasn't completely happy with the quote unquote producer's cut version either. So you sort of have the lesser of two evils. We didn't get to finish the producer's cut version. So even what's come out as a producer's cut version is not where we would have ended. But I think if I had to pick between the two, I'd pick the producer's cut personally.
I prefer the final cut we did. I thought it was much more original and scarier than the theatrical one.
I'm always amazed by Halloween's intense following, and I think, you know, the fans love this film so much and the series so much, which is fantastic. And so any anomaly or any sort of different version is going to definitely be of great interest. So here you have a completely different film that was never released, and I think it's just grown, maybe more than it should, but it's just grown as sort of this part of the myth of the whole Halloween franchise. And I'm happy now that finally at least a good version of it can come out rather than the grainy YouTube bootlegs that have been going around. At least now we'll have the producer's cut and it'll look like a film. Halloween 6 was a great experience for me personally because I was just sort of moving up a little bit in my career. It was the first chance to produce, although I was associate producer, but I was able to really learn and develop my skills, work with people like Bob Weinstein and my father and Joe Chappelle and Paul Freeman, really work intimately with the process with them. So that's what I personally would take from it. And how it stands in the franchise and in the lore of Halloween is always going to be the fans' answer.
Mustafa contacted me directly for Halloween 6. And the most important thing to him was to make the mask what everybody thinks it should be. Apparently, he was not a big fan of the last mask from Part 5. And, you know, he showed me the poster of the Halloween movies. This is what it has to look like.
The mask was sculpted by Chris Robbins, who is a really talented makeup artist. I think his only reference was a poster from Halloween 4.
I would come in from time to time and punch the clay a little bit myself, but it was mostly Chris who had sculpted it, and he did a great job.
Yeah, John's got a lot of insight as to what he wants it to look like. Even when he gives you the ability to go off on your own and be creative, he always comes around and likes to put his influence on it.
Most of the stuff I did was just detail and you know, making sure the proportion was the correct thing. Because I really went for the poster. I really went for what everybody perceived as the Michael Myers mask.
Some of the fabrication later on was done by John Foster and myself, and we did the hair and the paint.
It wasn't just clown white anymore. It was washes of burnt umber and sienna in just the right way, so that the shadow was permanently indelified into the mask, so it would look like Michael no matter what direction or how, you know, what kind of blue gels you put on it. It was Michael. And you know, even if you put the old William Shatner mask on George Wilbur, it would not look the same because George is a huge guy, and the guys inside the original Halloween mask were somewhat slight. So the task was to basically sculpt on George Wilbur's life mask. George is a great guy. He's funny, and he's a very kind and just guy. And to think this is the guy that plays Michael Myers, you know, he was a big teddy bear. And he was a pleasure to work with all the time.
Mustafa Akkad wanted me to come back. Well, I knew the character after doing 4, what Mr. Akkad wanted. He wanted a certain look, so I felt, and my contribution to 6 was to maintain that character. I know there was conflict on the set. It wasn't like when we did 4, there was nothing. Nothing like it was happening on 6. Halloween 4 was smooth. Everybody worked good together. But there was a lot of distractions on Halloween 6.
We didn't know anything about any additional photography. We thought the film was done and in the can. When we did the LA photography, somebody thought that maybe George was too big, too bulky. As a result, Michael Lerner, who was much thinner, and somebody recommended him, probably his dad, Fred Lerner, who was the stuntman on the film, actually did all the Michael stuff in the additional photography in LA.
It was the director's preference that I be replaced at that time, and so that's what it is. That's showbiz, you know, that happens all the time. People come and go on shows.
As far as I know, George did everything that he was told to do exactly the way he was told to do it. I know that when we got to doing the additional photography, he was not around, which was, I think, too bad, you know, because I think there would have been a nice consistency to have him there. The guy that they had was a little smaller.
They were both great guys. You know, George actually still was there doing stunts, so there was a scene where George is actually killed by Michael Lerner as Shape in the hospital.
The director requested me, so I went back. No animosity, just always friends. I got back with a smile and I left with a smile.
The movie was a little confused in terms of tone. Somewhere between the producer and the director, I think there was conflict. I know that I was asked to meet Harvey Weinstein with the producer, and we had discussed the specific makeup effects and the visual quality that Harvey wanted. And I have to say we were exactly on the same page. Let's go for broke, let's go nuts, let's make it crazy, weird. And I walked out of that meeting feeling pretty well. But then subsequently on the elevator ride down, the producer basically turns to me and says, "We're not doing any of that crap."
I think originally they were going to do a lot more in Utah, and I don't know if it was just they decided to cut some of it, but then when they had a screening and decided that they needed a little more blood and guts, you know.
And that's why I was brought back to go ahead and start inventing things, but a whole bunch of makeup effects artists were brought back to come in and do stuff. The big thing that I did was the asshole father. You got to see his head blow up, so that was a lot of fun.
The Bradford English electrocution, which is kind of my favorite thing that I did on the film. You know, I thought that turned out well.
It didn't make any sense at all, but it was over the top and crazy, and we got to show his face puff and erupt like a Hoffy hot dog, and then Ballpark Franks plumped and then he exploded. It was lots of fun.
The truck driver, I broke his neck.
And you see a spine come out. We had one gag, I believe, where this sort of shock jock radio announcer got his just come up, and so we did a full body cast of the guy, and you know, ultimately it could have been a stuntman, the way it was shot. It just, you know, it was rushed and it didn't work, but we did create a wonderful makeup effect that hardly anybody got to see. For me, these kinds of movies are all about the surprise, the irony, and the visual quality of it. And while it was beautifully photographed and you know, very well acted, I think the director did a really good job given the limitations. But all in all, I think the movie was compromised from the beginning, and I think that the confusion of kind of knowing which direction they wanted to go with the film is why there are so many cuts of the film.
I did. I saw the producer's cut, and in a way, it was definitely closer to Daniel's original script. But it was still lacking some things from his original script. Was amazing. It was a great script.
I think Daniel Farron's screenplay had a unique twist. It did something that I'm usually at odds with, but it did it, I think, in a very masterful way. I think Dan Ferens is a great writer, and he had a great take on how to turn Halloween into something and move it into sort of a different direction. The whole thing with the runes and the ancient brotherhood who's keeping Michael alive to do their dirt, that was kind of fun.
We thought we were really going to be working on just an amazing sequel.
Now with Michael and telling basically his origin, when you start to do that, you begin to sympathize with the character and you're not as afraid. Dan Ferens did a great job in controlling it and not getting it blatantly in your face, just sort of letting you follow the clues and allowing the story to unfold. And I think that in and of itself made it a little bit more interesting and not just another Halloween film. And that's what really drew me to the project.
I think we made a good movie, but I think if they would have stuck to his original script, and we would have had a great movie. He did some rewrites, and he did what he had to do to make it work, and I think he did a great job.
Irregardless of what cut we look at, Halloween is an enduring classic. Any film that goes to part 6 is a classic.
I think time has been good to the film. I think when you stack it up with the other sequels, I think it holds up. To work on a Halloween sequel was really, it was a thrill for me. And the fact that I got to play Michael in a couple scenes, and I got to play Michael on MTV to promote the film, Planet Hollywood. I'll never forget that. It was really a great experience.
No movie is perfect. And every movie has its own problems. I think had Joe and Dan been allowed just to do their vision, I think it would have been great.
The birds, we're remaking the birds now. And they must be all freaking out about the fog. Do you need to mark it?
No, it's all going in the camera. So.
I love that.
You ready?
I hope you're getting the fog outside. First foggy day, and I think it bodes very well for this interview. Halloween was extraordinary. It was made for no money, in no time, in a way that was unusual for films to be made, and certainly has never been replicated since I've been in the movie business, because it really was a very sort of familial experience. There were no trailers. There was one Winnebago for every department. So makeup, hair, wardrobe, all in one little tiny mobile home. The caterer was a friend of John and Deborah's, and they came and made lunch for us. That was the experience. It was my first movie, and obviously that was the really lovely part of it, was this very warm family feeling. So Halloween was released, and everyone assumes that it really became this big, big success, which it became after a period of time, but it was not an immediate success. I was obviously aware that it was doing well, and people were saying, oh yeah, it's doing well in the country, blah, blah, blah. And then sort of nothing happened. Like nothing happened. Like it wasn't like the thrill that you kind of think is you're in a hit, and then the phone's gonna start ringing, and the phone didn't ring. And I ended up, after Halloween, doing a Charlie's Angels episode with Cheryl Ladd, where I played a pro golfer. I'd never played golf a day in my life. I had a trainer, and they taught me how to hit a golf ball, so I played a pro golfer on Charlie's Angels, and I did a Love Boat episode with my mother. So instead of having this independence that you think film success is going to bring you, it was the opposite. I was dependent. I did a TV show with my mother. And I think John, who at that point his relationship with Deborah had ended, I remember the day they called me to tell me that they were breaking up, because I was like their daughter. You know, I was 19, they were both 30, and we'd become close, and the movie obviously was important to me and to them, very successful. And I remember they called me up, and I went up to their house in Hollywood, in the Hollywood Hills, to, and not knowing what they were going to tell me, and they told me that they were breaking up, and I remember crying. Well, because they were a couple. They were like, they were my movie parents, and it was sad. So then obviously John was with Adrienne Barbeau, and I think John called me and said that he was, you know, he felt badly that I hadn't worked, and he was going to make this part in The Fog for me.
Hi.
How far are you going?
Other side of town.
It's close enough.
Make it?
Yeah. Thank you.
It's funny, I watched The Fog before I did this interview. And I hadn't seen it in a long, long time. And I forgot that she jumps into bed with him very quickly. And you know, it's pretty chaste. It's hardly, you know, gratuitous on any level. I mean, Tommy's wearing a tank top. Yes, I'm assuming on some level it was nice to be playing this kind of rebellious rich girl who's hitchhiking her way around with a strange man in a strange town during a strange circumstance. Yeah, I think it felt good. The wardrobe was much more to my liking, that it jived much more with me. Not that I was jumping into bed with people, but you know what I'm saying. It certainly felt a little more contemporary, and it was good. I liked it. You know, to be perfectly honest, John was with Adrienne, and I knew it was hard for Deborah. Deborah was my girlfriend. We had become girlfriends. And I think it was a little bit like working with your divorced dad. And so it was hard for me to tell you whether or not John was more sophisticated as a filmmaker. I'm also not in the movie very much. I'm in the movie just a little bit. You know, it's really the whole town part, and I'm this sort of peripheral character. And so I didn't see a lot of the film making. You know, I'm in a car, you know, we're driving a lot. I remember a couple days out on the dock, those kind of scenes. I don't remember the mastery of his filmmaking being something I was aware of, because I was more aware of the social, emotional aspect of the fact that he and Deborah were still working together, but they were no longer lovers. He was with another woman, she was in the movie, and all of that swirling around was very, either it was very reminiscent for me of my childhood, with my parents being divorced and my father having a new wife, and I don't know, it was something, I have actually less concrete memories of The Fog. My mother was in it. You know, I mean, it was a weird time, and I think I was more emotionally involved with something than I was as acutely aware of the filmmaking, whereas in Halloween, I was acutely aware of the filmmaking.
Kathy, the Coast Guard's out there looking for them. They're going to cover the area pretty good, so really all we can do is wait.
I understand, Sheriff.
I know that John and Deborah were happy to know my mom happy to know them, et cetera, and she was Janet Leigh, I mean, you know. So I'm sure when they wrote the movie and they knew they had this part of this townswoman whose husband, you know, gets killed out on the boat. I'm sure she was like the first person they thought of. And the truth is, I'm glad we didn't have a lot to do. I think it would have been weirder for me, to have had a lot to do with her in the movie. It was nice to be in the movie with her and in a couple scenes with her, but, you know.
Now wait, get rid of that!
You know what? Honestly, it's not my kind of film. I don't think it's just not my kind of film. I mean, I was scared when I was watching it recently. There's some lovely moments in it, some lovely images. You know, ghosts and, you know, it's just not my bag. I am surprised that it has such a popularity because I just don't think it's that good a film. But I'm grateful to John for giving me the part. I feel like I'm biting the hand that fed me. Sorry, John. You know, it's not, I'm being honest because I'm 54 years old now. What's he gonna do, fire me? You know, I mean, I'm allowed to have that opinion. It's not my favorite film, but I am grateful to him beyond measure.
I think I'll go to Vancouver now.
Well, The Fog preceded Prom Night and Terror Train. So I did The Fog, and then at that point, Prom Night and Terror Train came in. And Prom Night and Terror Train were part of this Canadian tax credit that was created where American movies could be made in Canada and using Canadian actors, Canadian crew. And they were allowed, there was a formula, and they were basically allowed 2 above-the-line actors to be American, and then the rest had to be Canadian. So a bunch of movies got made in Canada that way. And Prom Night was the first for me, where I was one of the 2 members of the, you know, American contingent, and then the rest of the crew and cast was Canadian. So, you know, Prom Night was the first time I ever made a little money, actually, and so it felt good for me that I made a little money, and you know, it was Prom Night. I mean, it wasn't anything. It was Prom Night. I mean, it didn't have, and Terror Train was the same thing. It was a Canadian film, a very difficult shoot. It was shot all night. It was the entire film was at night, in a train packing warehouse in Montreal in the winter. And the train packing warehouse that we shot in, which means that it's basically a warehouse where you drive a train in and then you pack it up and then drive it away, is a non-insulated, you know, cavernous building. And we shot it at night in the dead of winter in Montreal. And so the train packing warehouse was freezing. The train itself was very cramped when you were shooting on it. And if you weren't in the scene, you were sitting in this train packing warehouse. It was really tricky. You're switched, it was a complete night schedule. It was very cold. And you know, the movie is the movie. It's not great, it's fine. The Scream Queen name occurred probably after Terror Train, because at that point I had done 4 horror films. They were moderately successful. One was massively successful and the other was moderately successful. And yes, I think it was coined for me. You know, at the time it felt, honestly, to be queen of anything was a good thing. Road Games was within that grouping. It's a thriller. It's not really a horror film. It's more of a psychological thriller. Richard Franklin was a respected thriller horror director in Australia. He was sort of the John Carpenter of Australia. Again, it was that same thing where American actors can come, but everybody else has to be Australian. I forgot, they had an actress hired And then they fired her so that they would hire me. So of course I was hated by the crew because I took a job away from an Australian actor. I think they had to pay her, is my guess. But when I showed up, I didn't remember that I had taken this job away from an Australian actor, and I think that crew was really pissed. So I think it took some time for them to welcome me to the movie. And you know, it was a weird movie. It was a road picture. We were basically driving across the Nullarbor Plain and shooting as we went. You know, Australians are interesting people. And there are a couple crazy Australians on this movie. There was this guy Grant, who was this famous stunt guy. He was nuts and really interesting. And you know, Richard was a talented director, you could tell. He had his producing partner was a woman named Barbie, and she looked just like Deborah Hill. And so it was kind of an interesting combo, you know, male director, female producer. It was an interesting experience. I want to be really clear. You know, I did Halloween 2 for the fans of these films because John didn't do Halloween 2. And that felt really weird to me. It felt really weird to me. We're making a movie that picks up where the first movie left off, and John didn't want to direct it. That was weird to me. Rick Rosenthal stepped into John's shoes. I mean, that was a very difficult thing to do, I'm sure, to create something that's yours, but you basically want to replicate the same vibe. So I think Rick did a good job against, you know, difficult circumstances. And I recognized that the passion wasn't there and that it was kind of a payday movie for everybody, and I understood that. And again, I felt like the audience deserved, you know, my participation and John and Deborah's. You know, it's quite good. I mean, Halloween 2 is actually quite good. It's scary, and there's stuff in the hospital, and it's all. There is a moment in that movie. You know, in the first Halloween movie, there are 2 moments where the audience groaned at me. And I would say to them kind of out loud in the theater, I'm sorry, I had to. You know, the throwing away the knife. Like throwing away the knife. But you understand, if I didn't throw away the knife, we have no movie. So there are these moments where I have to, as an actor, basically do things that inherently I disagree with. But she wouldn't do that. She has to do that. They're just things you have to do. So in Halloween 2, you have the experience where I'm hiding in the car, and all the police and everybody shows up, and I fall out of the car onto the thing, and then I do this great scene where I claw my way along the asphalt, my nails. I remember that. It was awesome, you know, but I can't get my voice out. It's like, are you kidding me? The people are 10 feet away, and you want me to go, help. Like I can't scream all of a sudden? Ugh. See, there's a moment where you go, really? But I'm gonna find my voice the minute the door is shut. So it's like, help, help, help. Door shut, help. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So, you know. But I had a perfectly good time on that movie. I knew that after finishing Halloween 2, that I couldn't do another horror film, or I would have no opportunities. I was worried I wasn't going to have any more opportunities anyway. But I was young enough, and I felt that although I was the Scream Queen, I still felt I had other opportunities coming, and that if I didn't stop then. So it was probably the only conscious decision I've ever made as an actor to not do something. I actually said it out loud. I said, that will be it. I'm not going to do any more. And the irony is that, like, within a day, I was signed to play Dorothy Stratton in the NBC TV movie about the life of her, or her life and death of the playmate who was killed by her husband. And so I went from one horror film really to another, but it was a very different, because this was now very glamorous. It was very much about what I looked like. My body all of a sudden was discovered by someone, and now all of a sudden I was playing a centerfold in a very true life, very dark story. So yes, it was a conscious decision on my part. It was the correct decision on my part, and I could have languished for a very long time looking for work, and it turned out to not happen that way. I was so astonished that I got to be in the movies. You know, I didn't feel very pretty, and I had no kind of marketable talent. It wasn't like I went to a performing arts college or Juilliard or RADA, where I could have these tools. I was just an actor. I was asked to do a lot of things in these films. You know, people kind of look at horror films like, you know, horror films. They're incredibly hard to do. The technical side of acting in those films is difficult. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of fear, rage that you have to portray. The circumstances are often arduous, and you also have to suspend a lot of belief, and you have to create a real sense of something that's the counterpoint to the unbelievable part of these films. And that takes a good actor to do. And I really think it gave me the confidence, you know, to like the song in New York, New York, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. I really do think it was a little bit like horror film university. And it was my way of going through to university, which I didn't really do. I credit and thank, you know, John and Deborah primarily for their confidence in me. It gave me confidence, and those movies allowed me to do Prom Night, Terror Train, Road Games, Halloween 2, and all of those gave me the confidence to then go off and do a movie that I did called Love Letters, and then right away go off and make Trading Places, and then, you know, after that, the next, and then Fish Called Wanda, and it really has worked that way for me. The biggest characters and films that I have done have direct correlation to John Carpenter, because without him, I just don't think I'd be anywhere. I don't think I would have made it. And, you know, I can't thank John enough, and there's probably no way I could ever repay him.